starting my stream, hopefully. Alright, I'm just gonna check all my settings and see if my sound is okay. Let's see. That looks about right. Okay, yes, I think that's accurate. Okay. Hi, Casto. Lore, yes. So I kind of like last time we didn't really have the time, right, to check out some of the lore. So I'm checking out some lore today. And if you have any suggestion for videos, also let me know. Because right now I just opened up like Vati Videos channel and I'm just looking at some of his lore videos because I know his are usually pretty good. Yeah, so let me just see. I actually wanted to check this out really quick if you guys don't mind about it because hi Tony, how are you doing? You have several suggestions? That's great. Okay, so please, you can tell me the name of the video or you can link it in Discord if you want me to, like, if you want me to see it directly. But for now, actually, I wanted to check out the Archthrones trailer. So I'm very good today, Tony. Thank you for asking. I don't know if you guys heard about this. This is like a fan project as well about it's a mod of DS3 and they just released like a demo. And I just want to check that out before I go into any actual Dark Souls 3 stuff. And then after that, start with lore of the main bosses, then optional bosses, then the NPCs. Okay. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I'm just gonna go through some of the stuff. I haven't really planned anything. I'm just like, okay, I'll just check out whatever seems interesting, right? Like, it looks cool, but it's buggy. Okay, let's have a look.
Welcome to the Nexus, lost soul. The Archthrones require a great many souls, so that the linking of the fire may commence it.
It looks very pretty. Hey, that's one of the angel guys from DS3. Oh. The angel boss.
Be aware. Even in death does the High Lord rule. In seance with the necromancer, Obadiah. Do not disturb them, if you can help it.
If we meet again, pray for mercy.
Like, this looks like nothing like Dark Souls 3, except for that looks like Dancer. Crucible Knight? What? That was a Crucible Knight, I tell you, I promise you. Godfrey? Yo, that's Godfrey. Godskin? Radagon? Wait, what? I'm recognizing like Elden Ring movesets. What the hell? So it's kind of like a mix, right? It's kind of like a mixture of, they mixed a whole bunch of stuff together.
Be aware. Even in death does the High Lord rule. In seance with the necromancer, Obadiah.
Reused moveset.
Do not disturb.
The environments look like really cool though. Like it kind of looks like they totally redid like all of the environments. It looks like nothing like,
pray for mercy.
What do we know?
We shall.
Oh, that's Godfrey. I don't know who this is. But no, that's a Godskin apostle, right? Hi, Jen! One boss even has Artorias moveset combined with Champion Gundyrs and Abyss Watchers plus Old Ivory King. Wait, Old Ivory King, is that from Dark Souls 2 as well? Oh, you're going to sleep soon? Well, sleep well, Jen. Thank you for stopping by though. Ooh. Yeah, this one is, so it's like a mixture. They mixed like Dark Souls 2, Elden Ring. You should play Dark Souls 2. I actually want to. I'm waiting for a sale right now. So I don't have it in my library. I'm waiting for Dark Souls 2 to be on sale. Cause I think that game is gonna be suffering. And so I don't want to pay a lot of money for it. It's just me though. I do want to try it out. I want to play it for sure. Okay, so this one looks kind of interesting, but it's just a demo for now, so I'm not sure I'm gonna try it out right now. Lore of the main bosses. Yeah, let me just check out this playlist. So I checked out this playlist for Dark Souls 3 lore. So there's Nameless King, Yorm, Sullivan, Patches, The Grand Betrayal. Let's see. Why don't I start with Yorm, I guess. And then maybe Pontiff.
Rarely do the giants of Dark Souls have happy fates.
That's a random subtitle.
In the Age of the Gods,
Chinese,
they
please,
had it
thank you.
best. Perhaps because one of their own was a powerful knight of Gwyn. Yet, even then, he suffered at the hands of former humans who packed his helm with tree resin and fooled him into thinking he was blind.
Aww,
The
what?
other giants of this age were put to use as basic laborers.
Yeah,
Their wits made them
Dark Souls
unfit
1.
for much else, except in rare occasions. In Drangleic, a distant race of giants invade the kingdom of the humans to take back that which was stolen from them. It ends in bloodshed, not to mention the giants taken for experimentation, their very souls becoming displaced from their bodies. And finally, Lothric,
Hi, Manny. How are
where
you
their
doing?
abuse hits new heights, imprisoned, forced to wallow in the muck of the cathedral, slaughtered, or feigning death. Only one rose above the rest,
Oh.
and even ruled over humans. Yorm. Yorm is the descendant of an ancient conqueror, a conqueror who once subdued the people of the profaned capital.
Ooh.
And in
He looks so
time,
badass.
Yorm was asked by these very same people to lead them. He would come to accept this role, and he served as both their weighty blade and their stone-hard
Oh
shield.
my gosh.
And you would think that this transfer of power would earn him the people's respect and gratitude, but it didn't. Instead, those who spoke of Yorm as Lord were quite insincere. Perhaps this is because of Yorm's heritage. We don't know who the conqueror before Yorm was,
Oh.
and he might not even be featured in-game.
That makes
Our
this
two
like
biggest
even more
clues,
sad.
However, are Yorm's size and the fact that the people of the capital suddenly found themselves without a ruler or protector and needed to ask for one. And in my opinion, Wolnir, the enormous conqueror of Karthus who suddenly fell to the abyss, fits this criteria, or at least
Was he
is
also
good
a
example
giant?
of it.
Wait, was Wolnir also? I guess it
Wolnir
makes sense.
once brought the rightful lords of the world to their knees and ground their crowns to dust. However, he went on to fall to the abyss, presumably leaving many kingdoms without a ruler, and Wolnir wasn't exactly known for sharing his power with others. So at the very least, it was probably an absence of rule like this that led the people of the capital to ask for a powerful protector instead of simply being conquered all over again. So it fits that they would ask Yorm, yet it also fits that they would feel so much shame for having
So big.
to ask him. Their fate would be in the hands of the conqueror's descendant, and not just that, but in the hands of a giant, no less. Simpletons and
He's so
dullards
cool the
with
way he
very
sits on a
few
throne, though.
notable exceptions. So Yorm fought hard to prove himself as lord, risking everything
The
for his
screen
people.
shaking, yeah.
Against the kingdom's enemies he fought unflinchingly, great machete in one hand and great shield in the other. Yet still, his people's shame and prejudice must have manifested as bitterness, distrust. For, in another
Ooh.
brave gesture, Yorm gave his people the means to defeat him. A storm ruler, an ancient sword also
He's
known
pondering why the
as
heck he's still
Giant
alive.
Slayer, capable
Yeah.
of bringing giants to their knees from the strength of storm held within it. Yorm carried 2 of these, and now only one remained in his possession.
Man, there's
At
always
some
like
point
one
during
weakness,
the
right?
wars, Yorm lost the one he wished to protect. It's not clear who this is, whether they were a friend or a partner, nor how they died, but this loss became the legacy of his later years. It was an event so significant he threw away his great shield, for he was no longer interested in self-preservation.
Oh, that's the
nor the
shield that you can
protection
get
of
from his
others.
soul, right? But he doesn't use it, like, in the battle?
place of his shield, Yorm added a left-handed notch to his machete, enabling the smashing technique of a berserker with nothing
Big
left
bonk?
to lose. In time, his enemies were crushed, and the only threat to the capital was from within. A group of women, relatives of some oracle from a bygone age, suddenly triggered a curse subsisting deep within them. They all distorted into this same monstrosity, an enormous hand with calcified protrusions
Ew,
and
I hated
a hole
those.
swirling deep within the palm. Despite all of this, they went on living without any cares, and from that day forward, the profaned flame was born within the capital. The profaned flame. It came to define the capital, and it was defined by 3 rules. 1. It is said to be inextinguishable. 2. It is able to swallow the hearts of those it touches, inspiring cruelty and torture. And 3. The darkness of the abyss can be seen within it.
Oh, wait,
With
this is
nothing
related
left
to the
lose
abyss as
and a
well?
monumental soul to burn, Yorm decided to link the fire. With this act, he would put the profaned flame to rest, enable a new age of fire, and prove his detractors wrong. Show them all they were wrong about him. So, just as he gave one storm ruler to those who doubted him, he gave the other to one that he trusted, along with a promise that
Onion
Sigurd,
bro.
this
Yes.
bumbling, kind-hearted knight of Katarina, would slay his old friend if he ever faltered in his duty.
I'll try and turn up volume to
And
max.
So the fire was linked, and Yorm failed
Wait.
in all the ways that they said he would. In this place, we get
There.
an unprecedented look into the linking of the fire. When it happened, items say
Is that better?
a rush of
Hi,
flame
Shadow,
fell
by the
from
way.
sky and incinerated not only Yorm, but all the residents of the capital. So the question we're left asking is, was this normal? Or was Yorm's soul somehow not enough? Or were giants not supposed to link the fire? For all his hard work protecting these people, they all went up in flames, and I assume his detractors would have felt validated in doubting Yorm if they weren't all burnt to a crisp. Ages pass, bolstered in part by Yorm's sacrifice. But the fire inevitably fades, and Yorm is brought back from the dead to link the fire once more. There must be something about a second chance at life that causes a lord to fear death. For, like the other 2 lords who rose alongside him, Yorm flees his duty and settles in the ruined capital. he once
Maybe they
called
all
home.
thought the first time
He
was kind of
takes
pointless.
His old throne,
And they changed their
which is now
minds.
surrounded by the melted corpses of those who once
Oh my
doubted
God.
him, and he waits. Truly alone this time, even more so than he was in life.
Moment has almost come. I just need a bit more
Hi,
time.
JF.
Sigurd, with a little help from you, of course,
Welcome to the
finds
stream.
courage to meet his old friend.
Hope you have a good time here too. We're just watching some lore videos about Dark Souls 3 right now. Oh yeah, I love this moment so much with Onion Bro. Oh, it's so good.
Old friend,
I'm glad I did this. And thanks for everybody telling me like how to do this.
Siegward of the Knights of Katarina, have come to uphold my promise. Let the sun sun shine upon this Lord of Cinder.
Oh man. No, Onion Bro,
It
no.
seems I am in your debt once again. My thanks. I could have not kept my promise without you.
Yeah, I love Souls
For
games,
a final
Jeff.
toast
Oh, I'll check out your channel in a little bit then,
to your valor
because I love Souls
and
games.
my old friend Yorm.
Oh
Long may the sun
no, this made me so
shine.
sad. He did what he wanted to do, though. Oh,
I'm going to have myself a little nap.
a little nap.
The only thing to do, really, after a nice toast. You are a true friend. Best of luck with your duty.
After your final toast, and as you leave the arena, Sigurd's soul floats towards you.
Oh yeah.
Did he die from wounds that he sustained during the fight? It's impossible, you'd think, considering that Siegbrow has healing properties. No. His quest is complete,
Yeah,
his
he
oath is fulfilled, so
didn't have a
Sigurd ends
purpose.
his life. For all that remained was that final toast, and to wish you luck with your duty.
Oh yeah, that made me so sad
In
when
the
it
end,
happened.
all that came from the profaned capital
Onion Bro.
were the cinders of a lord, fit only to surrender its fire for your ambition. So knowing all of this and all of what happened, what do you make of it? Oh, and did I forget to mention? The profaned flame burns on, exempt from the tragedy and waiting for more hearts to corrupt. And
Oh.
somewhere, a young sorcerer escapes a painting.
Ooh. Ooh, that's Pontiff. Ooh, that's Pontiff. Ooh, okay. We have to go look at him as well, because, like, I'm very interested. Yeah, so Castle said if you kill Ludleth and then reload the area, you'll find him sleeping. He has a nightmare where he begs not to be burned again. So, is Ludleth from the same area as Yorm, or was he, like... I don't actually know his lore, like, at all. I just know he's a guy without feet who gives you boss stuff. So, is he related to Yorm? That's actually cool. Wait. Or is it related to just, like, linking the fire? I'm kind of curious. Yeah, let me actually see here. So there's also DLC, Story of Ariandel, Slave Knight. There's a lot of stuff here I could check out, but I'm gonna do Pontiff, I think, yeah. Oh, Onion Bro is so sad, man. Not as... It's worse because in Dark Souls 1 I ruined his quest. So... And he died, like, in front of me. Lords of Cinder don't want to be burned again because the pain was unbearable. Yeah. Yeah, that's my idea too, is like... People who link the fire the second time, they're like, well, that was kind of a waste or something, right? Yeah, self-sacrifice for what? That's why I made it dark. I was like, enough fire. Yeah, so let's see. Pontiff, that's the next one here, so let me check that one out.
The tyrant, Salavan, was only a young sorcerer.
Oh, I hope you guys don't mind the Chinese subtitles. I'm practicing my Chinese at the same time. If you want me to turn it off, just let me know.
When he left the painting. Ariandel is another world, a sanctuary that pulls forlorn beings from the outside and gives them a home. They find comfort in the sameness, and they find comfort in the rot.
Wait, so
I'd imagine
Pontiff?
growing up in a place like this,
Pontiff actually came
surrounded
from
by
here?
beings that have lost everything in the outside world.
Multitasking,
Sullivan
yeah, Tony.
alone had lost nothing, so, ironically, in this place of belonging, he did not belong. So it's no surprise that his envy inspired terrible ambition. For, as Sullivan would prove, there is a lot to fear from a man with nothing to lose. So, a young sorcerer with spells of frost, he left and never returned.
Where have you gone, sweet child? It's cold outside. It's awfully cold. Where have you run off to?
What? Wait,
It
whose
was
voice is
cold
that?
outside. Home.
His mother is
Far
a
below
tree
dark
woman?
moon
Like, actually?
lies Anor Londo, city of the gods. Further still, Irithyll, nestled in the Boreal Valley. And yet, even further below, past the dungeon cells of Irithyll, is the ruins of a once proud
That
capital.
dialogue? Really?
The only human kingdom to have ever been ruled by a giant, actually. But his story doesn't matter, for he left nothing of worth behind, except perhaps this. The profaned flame.
Right.
Profane, for it defies the law of fire and never goes out. Profane, for it has the abyss hidden within it. And profane, for it corrupts the hearts of men, offering power
Hey, Chuck.
but inspiring
How are you
evil.
doing?
Salavan, items say, stumbled upon this place when he was yet a young sorcerer. It's not uncommon to see sorcerers out on distant journeys of discovery, and I'd bet that when he left the capital, he was not the same man. For from here on out, a burning ambition is said to have taken root within him, and considering the nature of this flame, I think we can take that quite literally. So with a greatsword, and perhaps a heart profaned by the flame, he left,
Also,
his sights set on Irithyll.
so he took that flame as
For
well.
to Salavan's dismay, this rotting world was just like the one he had left. At this point in our story, Anor Londo was still a city of the old gods, one of the most resilient cities in the world, for it and the old royalty who
Oh,
resided there
St. Patrick's
remained
Day.
largely unchanged.
Hope you're
throughout
not too
multiple
hungover,
links of
Chuck.
fire. It was home to the children of Gwyn
Yay!
himself, Sister
Gwynevere,
Guinevere with her
yes.
silver knights, her
Amazing
brother
cast.
Gwendolyn, captain of the Dark Moon Knights, and his half-sister Yorshka, the crossbreed. Power emanated from the cathedral, which was patrolled by the Silver Knights and guarded by Ornstein and Smo, two
Oh,
famous
man.
knights of Gwyn.
Can't wait
The
to fight
time
those
would come,
again.
However, when Ornstein left the cathedral in search of Gwyn's firstborn child, making Smo the last knight to remain at his post, guarding the ruined cathedral. There are also deacons of the Way of White, which have a sect here in Irithyll, headed by Archdeacon MacDonald. Far away, though, many more of this order toil in the Cathedral of the Deep, devoted to maintaining
Thanks,
the
Jack.
Age of Fire that Gwyn began. Here, great and terrible beings are put to their final rest. And just now, in our story,
And this
a
place has
powerful
such a good
saint named
atmosphere.
Aldrich has just been sacrificed to the first flame, becoming a Lord of Cinder. Back in Irithyll, also, the Order of the Dark Moon Knights, led by the Dark Sun Gwendolyn, swear their oaths. The Blue Phantoms are bound to become a shadow of Father Gwyn and a shadow of Sister Guinevere, hunting down any who would threaten the champions
so
who linked
Aldrich,
the fire.
Did
And
not
it was
choose
this
to link
order,
the fire. He
the
was
Dark Moon
sacrificed.
Knights, that the sorcerer Salavan saw fit to infiltrate. And we know this because he was presented with the Great Sword of Judgment, a ceremonial sword representing the judgment of the moon.
Oh yeah.
It glows
His sword
like
is
the
awesome.
blue of the dark moon, but much deeper. If you were to look more closely at this blade, then you would realize that its magic is far closer to sorcery than any existing lunar power. For
Yeah?
Salavan did not draw his power from faith like the other knights did, but he drew it instead from sorcery.
Aldrich was
which
sacrificed,
is
yeah.
an art that is despised by the old royalty. And perhaps that's for good reason, for sorcery would ultimately be the downfall of the Way of White, the Dark Moon Knights, and the
Pontiff is
gods
such a
alike.
badass. Yeah,
When the old
absolutely.
world is rotten,
I thought he
burned
was
away.
great. That was a great
And
boss
so
fight.
the pontiff's usurpation of Anor Londo began with Gwyndolin.
The Dark Moon Knights were once led by my elder brother, the Dark Sun Gwyndolin. But he was stricken by illness, and leadership of the knights fell to me. Then Sullivan wrongfully proclaimed himself pontiff, and took me prisoner. Oh, where could my dear brother be?
Yoshka, the last remaining knightess of the Dark Moon Order, mentions that it all began when her brother fell ill. She doesn't blame his illness on Sullivan, but you and I both know that either he or his subordinates
It's like Gwyn has
weren't
so
above
many
using
children.
poison.
It's just like
For it was
America.
not only the Dark Moon Knights affected by Sullivan's influence. The Holy Deacons also were befouled from within. Archdeacon MacDonald, a prominent member of their order who
that
resides
guy.
in Irithyll,
With the dogs,
committed
no.
a grave trespass. He began to channel his faith for sorcery, transforming symbols of ecclesiastic authority into catalysts of deep soul sorceries. For MacDonald, these stagnating souls and the magic derived from them represented the glorious bedrock of
Probably
this
had
world.
several wives.
Their order was intended
We
to
don't know
deal
any
with
of Gwyn's
the
wives,
great and
do we?
terrible beings that came to them, but inevitably they were affected by the terrors that came into the cathedral. This treason was not kept within Irithyll. No, MacDonald also imparted deep soul sorceries to Archdeacon Royce and his deacons, who all resided in the cathedral, and he added new dark
You can
pages to
theorize? Yeah.
their tome of miracles, literally corrupting his order against the very flame that they had sworn to protect. He was undoubtedly collaborating with the sorcerer Sullivan, who himself had his
Legit.
new knights infected and empowered by the deep. Dark magics erupt from their throats,
Legit, you're a
drawn
little
towards
behind,
life,
maybe.
and their very weapons became eaten away by the tiny, biting insects that feed upon those close to the deep.
So the deep,
This
is the deep
force
related to
in
the
Irithyll,
abyss?
wielding
Or
the
is that not the
profaned
same
flame,
thing?
gnawed at by the deep, headed by the archdeacons and the pontiff, became an evil that pushed the entire royal family out of their ancient home. However, some residents clearly escaped all of this trauma, because later, far away in a city named Lothric, it is said that there is another queen revered as a goddess of fertility and bounty,
Oh?
just like Guinevere
A
once
waifu?
was. But back in Anor Londo, now with Pontiff Sullivan fully in control, the true atrocities could begin. Many
Deepest,
in Irithyll were
darker
enslaved,
form
and as you
of
can
the
see,
abyss.
were pushed
Okay.
forward as fodder by the pontiff's fire witches. The less fortunate were turned into beasts.
Oh man, those doggos.
For it is said
I have
that
like
men who
PTSD
peer
from
into
those.
the black eyes of Sullivan are transformed. Look closely at the faces of the dogs,
Oh
at the
no.
hair of the spider women,
Ooh.
at these ribcage beasts that prey when they're defenseless. Sullivan forced out the beasthood within
Hi,
men,
Gradient.
especially in those who would become his Outrider Knights. The most notable
Oh my
of the
God.
Outrider Knights was the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. Her
The dancer,
Aurora Veil
yes.
is actually an artifact of the old gods, permitted only to be worn by direct descendants of the old royal family. And before she was controlled by Sullivan, the dancer was likely a daughter of Guinevere, as she has a fragment of her mother's soul. However,
Oh.
she was clearly left behind.
that
as
explains
the
how
rest of her
sexy she
family
is.
Escaped to Lothric. When
You're
captured,
right.
the pontiff ordered her to serve first as a dancer, perhaps to shame her or entertain him. Then he made her an Outrider Knight, giving her a ring of his right eye that he knew would transform her. She became
Double
an
cheek.
enchanting
Yeah.
beast of death.
That was
her
such a
armor
badass
fusing
boss and
with
so
her own hide.
sexy.
Never far from the fleeting dancer was Vort, the Outrider Knight who received the pontiff's left
He was
eye
less
ring.
sexy.
Clearly, there was something between them, some bond shared, for they would never return to Irithyll, but like all the Outrider Knights, their spirits can sometimes be seen roaming the old city.
Oh, that's them,
together.
yeah. The spirits.
In total, 5 Outrider Knights were
They-
dispatched to Lothric.
Bored
One
thick.
guarding the Road
Yeah.
of Sacrifices, the second in the basement of Lothric Castle,
Oh,
the
these
third
guys.
skulking in the Grand Archives, and the 2 most unique knights, Vort and the Dancer,
So they're all
guard
like
the main exit
controlled
and
by
entrance to
Pontiff
Lothric Castle
Sullivan?
itself. Their placement is no coincidence. Sullivan may be back in Irithyll, but he knows that the last vestiges of the royal family have a presence in Lothric, and his eyes are all over their failing kingdom, watching as the royal family desperately struggles to produce an heir to the linking of the fire, waiting as he
Is there a
knows
lore reason?
that when they fail, Aldrich will be
For
raised
all that
once
junk?
more
Yeah,
as a
I don't
Lord of
know.
Cinder.
Hmm.
And who do you think he'll be indebted to when he rises from his grave? To this end, Sullivan protected the gate to Irithyll with an old trick from the Painted World. A magical barrier was erected, repelling everything and everyone except those with a message from a small doll. Wherever you go, it says,
Oh, that's
the
like
moon
how you
still
enter the
sets in
painted
Irithyll.
world in Dark Souls
Wherever you
1.
may be, Irithyll is your home. Sullivan, or the deacons, placed one of these dolls in Aldrich's coffin and waited. And eventually, of course, he came, for where else would he go? Aldrich had spent a long time ruminating on the fading of the fire. For him, it inspired prophetic visions of a new future, an age not of fire, but of deep seas.
So did they kind of just
He knew the path to
trapped
this world
Aldrich
would
in
be
here?
arduous, but he had no fear, for he would become not a mere devourer of men, but a devourer of gods. And so, imagine his pleasure when he found one waiting for him in his new cathedral.
Oh my.
Gwyndolin, son of Gwyn and former captain of the Dark Moon Knights.
If only he were here,
Yeah,
I
why
would be
wasn't
most
Dancer
pleased for you
barefoot? That
both
would have
to
made
meet.
Dancer like S tier.
as
Like,
most
immediately.
assuredly would he.
But Aldrich wasn't the only being resurrected. You put the pontiff's achievements to shame, rolling over him with the help of either Black Hand Gotthard for Lothric, the Pale Shade for Londor,
What?
or Anri for Horus.
I mean,
The pontiff made many enemies,
I helped Henri,
and they were
but
his
I didn't see those
downfall
other two
in the end.
NPCs.
Here you have a man who stopped at nothing to change the world. He mastered sorceries of frost, miracles of the moon. He partnered with a kingdom-ending flame and took advantage of the deep.
Oh man, I think this
He
fight is like
used
giving me
all of this,
PTSD.
plus social and political manipulation to usurp an age-old kingdom, rising within the ranks of its knights.
At least
twisting
Pontiff
its
has bare
deacons
toes.
to
He has
feed
his
a
bare
god
feet.
to a lord of cinder and supplant the age of fire. The tyrant Sullivan tore apart many bonds, but was undone himself by a mere unkindled, who proves that no champion is more powerful than the fire-linking curse.
Yeah, I beat him. I was so proud
So
of
if
that.
this man can't change the world, then what hope do we have?
He was able to redeem himself by showing off Frida's toes. Yeah. Bosses with bare toes are always cooler. He's built like a skeleton? Yeah, I mean. I like how Aldrich is like, he just starts by devouring like Gwyndolin's toes or whatever. Oops. Okay, I didn't mean to click that. That's interesting. Wait, so what did you say? I should do the grand betrayal, right? The grand betrayal. Okay. No, Pontiff is like, I had no idea that he was actually from the Painted World. I just had no clue about it, anything. All I know when I was playing the game is like he was a badass. he destroyed me. Oh my gosh. But eventually he got corrupted as well, so... Oh, we get Japanese ads?
Firelink Shrine
Sorry. Japanese ads for something, I don't know. Was that a Rise of the
a
Ronin?
rather terrible place when you think about it. Sure, the Firekeeper will always be there for you, but what about when you're not there for her?
Oh, yeah.
She's disposable, forgotten, just like Champion Gundyr who's stranded in
Yeah,
another
how many
dimension.
Firekeepers were down
Or
there?
like the Handmaiden.
Like, actually,
Chained-
like... How many people, like, what happened
What about
to
when
all
you're
these
not there for
Firekeepers?
her?
And what happened?
She's disposable, forgotten, just like Champion Gundyr who's
Excuse me.
stranded in another dimension.
I'm still coughing.
Or like the Handmaiden, chained to this fate for what must feel like an eternity.
Remember well, I am undead, bound forever
Several
by the
dozen,
shrine's
yeah.
curse.
I mean, what
As the
happened?
fire is linked over
Is that just
and
all the
over,
people who didn't who
kingdoms
failed
change,
on their
and
quests?
so too does the shrine. In this world, as we know, the shrine is a literal graveyard of ash, quite befitting of an exhausted world. Though one constant through it all is the suffering of the Firekeepers. These women aren't as selfless as you might think. No, they're prisoners, just like you, and they fight for the linking of the fire, for with the linking of the fire comes rest.
Oh,
Finally,
yeah.
the curse of the undead will be lifted.
I never talked to her.
I can die human.
Long have I awaited one such as you. One who can set me free.
Which
Ashen
Gertrude one?
Link the fire
Hey, who's Gertrude?
for the lords of Cinder, for the ashen prisoners, for all those held to preserve the fire. Link the first flame.
Gradient, most of this I think
Though
is
as we've come to
in-game.
learn, this rest
Most
is
of this is,
temporary, and the curse
in-game
never
dialogue and
was
stuff.
lifted. And yet, the
But
legend
they did,
of the
like,
linking
made
of
it
the
more-
fire
they
continues
made it
to
more, like,
infect the
cinematic.
minds of many. Undead are shepherded towards the first flame, and the kingdoms of the gods are always designed to enable their sacrifice in some way. Have you ever noticed that the incinerating kiln is never too far from the kingdom of men? Firelink Shrine is a crumbled peak of New Londo. The Throne of Want sits below Drangleic Castle, and in Lothric, hidden behind the King's Garden, along a trail of ash and untended graves, is the current iteration of Firelink Shrine, and what must be the 1,000th Firekeeper capable of sending us forward to be face to face with Cinder itself.
Surrender your
It's
fire
weird how it like
to the
replicates
true
itself.
heir.
Like, I
Let
mean,
him
Firelink
grant
Shrine and
death
stuff.
to the old gods of Lordran, deliverers of the first flame.
Those that fail to become Cinder are cremated all the same, their ashes scattered in the untended graves by the soul of Cinder. Those that succeed become lords of Cinder.
Yeah, some of these are
But
game cutscenes
It
as
says
well.
a lot about the future
so-
that they fight for if our lords have refused to fight for it a second time. And so, the grand betrayal was conceived. This betrayal of the flame was not a novel concept by any means, but perhaps it was still a necessary one, considering it led to the link of fire being threatened and the bell tolling for the unkindled. According to his cinders, the Prince Lothric was destined to be a Lord of Cinder and was cherished by the royal family, though, ironically, he was born ill, shriveled, and frail, unable even to wield the platinum sword that was
S-tier
his
boss
birthright.
right here.
Conversely, Lothric's older brother, Lorien, was a great champion of the realm. While his younger brother's sword would never be wielded, his was scorched black by the flame of the demon prince, which he had slain single-handedly.
Oh, really?
The great
Wait,
tragedy that's referenced so often in their lore is surely that while Prince Lothric was chosen to be a Lord of Cinder, Prince Lorien was the one suited for it. And so, Lorien must have had a great love for his brother,
Yeah.
for he embraced Lothric's curse, merging their
Great
two
love,
souls.
that's for sure.
Tragically, this left Lorien mute and crippled, yet it is said that Lorien indeed wished it so, all the same. There's this great mention of the grief of the twin princes, for once they came together, they rejected everything that had made this sacrifice necessary. So instead of linking the flame, they settled in their throne room, and simply watched the fire fade from a distance, and with their strength combined, fought
they
off
never
any
actually linked
who
the
would seek
flame.
their cinders.
Ill-starred are they who take the throne. I shall not stand among them. The fire-linking curse, the legacy of lords, let it all fade into nothing. Mark my words, Ashen One. You remain among the accursed.
If we were to join them in their rest, this is the fate that the princes would have us live, a darkened shrine. Most likely their shrine is hidden behind the chambers of the consumed king. And items tell us that if a place is devoid of light, so too will it be devoid of time. Perhaps this explains away the terrible convolution within this place, justifying how those in the future shrine can be pulled to this realm like the Swordmaster, justifying how we physically walk here from present-day Lothric and accounting for the dead Firekeeper who is from the
Skill
past
differential.
and tucked away. But of all the things here,
so if
from
we choose
past,
darkness,
present, or
are we
future,
choosing the same as they
she
did?
is the most consequential, for she is the one that's holding the eyes that enable a Firekeeper to betray the flame.
Choose the darkness.
Found her, did we?
So I chose the same as
And
the twin
black
princes,
eyes
actually,
that
right?
shimmer within, I see. 'Tis as if it were but yesterday.
Oh.
We did all we could to spare her from them. Much has happened since. Mayhap I should apprise thee of what the thin light of these eyes might reveal to the eyeless Firekeeper. Scenes of betrayal, things never intended for her ken.
Best ending?
Visions of
Question mark?
this age's end.
The eyes are said to have belonged to the first Firekeeper, and of all the would-be Lords of Cinder, it makes the most sense for Prince Lothric to have had access to such an heirloom.
the first
he is,
one?
after all, the descendant of old royalty,
Is that the
inheritor
one
of the
from Dark
throne,
Souls 1?
And it seems that he and Lorien coaxed their Firekeeper to stifle the flame back in their age, much like we can with the eyes in our possession. Now ask yourself, how does Ludleth know about any of this? Ludleth refers to the eyes and the woman they're planted upon in the past tense. It follows that somehow he linked the flame after
What is
the
that
princes
noise?
refused to.
Look not in bewilderment as I say. I linked the fire long ago.
Sorry, there's a noise
becoming
outside.
the Lord of Cinder. If substantiation be thy want, set thine eyes upon my charred course. This sad
Damn, that's a
cadaver
nice close-up.
There's something wrong in this dialogue. Listen to how guilty and
It's the
how
best spinning
defensive he
Axe. Hi, by
sounds.
the way, Axe.
A
How are
true
you
Lord
doing?
of Cinder would have
How's
no
your day
need
been?
to constantly reaffirm his
Fits
or her
with the ending.
legitimacy.
Yeah, I think the
And we
dark
get
ending
closer
I
to
got,
the truth
I was
on
very,
this by
actually,
listening
it
to
was very
him as he
interesting.
sleeps, as he dreams about the nightmarish rite of linking the fire.
Ah, it cinches to the bone. It hurts. Please help me.
Oh, this is what you
Be done
meant,
with me.
Casso.
No, God, no. I cannot bear it.
Tiana.
Burns.
Buyao. Sorry, I'm reading the Chinese one. It's so interesting.
I am a lord.
我说完了。
A wee flame. Belike. But I shoulder the world.
It doesn't carry the same in Chinese, I don't think.
Forgive me.
It doesn't like hit the
I am
same.
not to blame. I'm not.
From his half-burnt corpse to the guilt that we hear, it seems most likely that Ludleth partially linked the flame. Perhaps it's because of him that there's a light in this world at all, that the bell was able to toll for help. Truly though, this story is one that I can't possibly claim to have all the answers to. For example, was it possible for weak little Ludleth to link the fire because the twin princes had already defeated the soul of Cinder? If Ludleth could link it, why couldn't Champion Gundyr? Who was the first Firekeeper? Why are there Black Knights here? And why is this place still so dangerous to our Unkindled? Perhaps this place was laid with defenders for a reason? For of all the shrines, this one seems the most geared towards stopping anyone who would dare rise and somehow link the fire. It's difficult, and perhaps pointless
Yeah, it
to come
is.
through here. Champion Gundyr did arrive, only to find the coiled sword of the shrine broken in advance, and the firekeeper gone. Grave wardens patrol the graves, are devoted to hemorrhaging any reanimating corpses, and the only firekeeper that patrols the grounds is a scholar. The daughter of Crystal
She's a
is drawn to
firekeeper?
any embers that would walk through this shrine. And of all the things that don't make sense in this story, it does
Hi,
make a lot
Cryo.
of
Good
sense
morning.
that there would be a scholar here. For the first of the scholars, as you may recall, is said to have doubted the linking of the fire, and was also a private mentor to the royal prince. At the highest peaks of Lothric Castle are the Grand Archives, home to the scholars. They're the faction with a close relationship to the previous King Osiris, who went mad studying their store of knowledge. And this close relationship between the
Also has
crown and the
allergies?
scholars has clearly carried over to the new
X.
young prince.
Would
Lothric.
smell and dust.
But who was
And
the first
snow?
scholar?
You got
There are
snow?
many
Oh my
candidates,
gosh.
but many have theorized
Do you happen to
that
have
it was Uldir.
have like a mask?
And while all the
Like an
evidence
M3
behind
mask?
it being Uldir is circumstantial, the
Might be
rise of the
good.
Unkindled
Protect
is
your
certainly
lungs and
something
stuff.
Uldir would have fought for. A destiny beyond the scope of light, beyond the reach of dark, a painted world inhabited by ash, a future born of this world but free of its curses. In no
Yeah.
small way, the princes are responsible for the
I
rise
wanna-
of ash.
I want to know
an
about the
unintended
painted world, like
consequence
what
of their
happens
grand
after
betrayal.
you give the blood of the dark soul as well. Like, I mean, I know we probably can't know about
Think you can
that.
kill me in PvP? Well, this is your chance. In exactly 2 weeks, on the 23rd of
Okay.
September at 7 p.m.
He has a
PDT,
PvP.
I'll be hosting a PvP event.
I think we're late for that one. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're a bit late for that PvP. But I don't want to PvP this guy anyway. He seems like he's really good. But yeah, I'm so curious about the painted world and what would happen like afterwards, but there's no way for us to know, I guess. But we can only imagine that it would be better than the other world, right? Don't we had all doors and windows open? Okay. It's okay, but really cold. Yeah, if it's snowing. I bet it's like super cold over there. Story made me more inquisitive to play this game, but now I'm confused which one I should play first, Elden Ring or Dark Souls. Recently I completed Sekiro. Wow, Grady, you played Sekiro first? So I've been told Sekiro is like the hardest of all of them, so good job. I'm scared to play it myself because I'm just like pretty casual about games, you know, so I don't know which one you should play first, but I played Elden Ring first. I really love it. But I think I played Dark Souls 1 and 3 and I love them as well. Yeah, like I love all of them. Dark Souls 1 has its like janky moments. for sure, but it's like so iconic. Hi Ricardo, Liza P. I should watch Nameless King's. Oh yeah, I wanna know about Nameless King, for sure. Let me see if I can find that. Is that in here? Yeah, it's in here. Sekiro has a steep learning curve. Yeah, JF. I wonder if I could get that. Maybe. I have it in my library.
Gwyn's children is to tell the story of Gwyn
Amazing chest ahead. Yes.
himself.
Okay, sorry.
For his children were all born.
How about
to
Bloodborne? No,
fulfill
I don't have a
purpose.
PS4. This is real sad.
Gwyn's
I want to
first
play
daughter,
Bloodborne.
Guinevere was a maternal figure cherished by all. She was born to soothe the kingdom after a period of intense war against the dragons. Gwyn's son, Gwyndolin, was a master of illusion.
Snake toes.
After Guinevere fled the failing kingdom in fear, it was Gwyndolin who disguised the fading of the light. And
Yeah, I
finally,
play on
Gwyn's
PC.
youngest daughter, Filianor, was truly a product of her father's pride, for as long as she slumbered, Gwyn's world would not end. But there was a fourth child, a nameless king, erased from history.
Yes!
The god of war,
Best boss!
Gwyn's firstborn son.
And one of the best.
The first war ever fought was the war for disparity, a war for the right to flesh and blood, where before there was only stone, a war for the right to the surface, where before there was only the below, a war for the right to a beginning and to an end, for before there was
Oh.
neither. The everlasting dragons were to be introduced to the concept of the end, and it was Gwyn's firstborn son, like his brothers and his sisters to come, who was divinely conceived for this purpose.
Excellent
So it
toes.
was that the son's eldest born inherited
I'm still wearing
the
his
lightning
toes
from
in the
his
game
father,
right now.
along with this powerful predisposition for war and arms. His weapon was an ingenious sword
Hi,
spear
RK.
that leveraged
Yeah, we're
the
watching
user's
some
own
Vati.
body weight, allowing it to be trodden remarkably deep into tough dragon hide. This was the earliest form of what would become the cross spear, which went on to inspire the legendary weapon wielded by the dragon slayer Ornstein, who was, unsurprisingly, anointed the first knight to the Nameless King himself. The Nameless King also wore an attire woven of sharp dragon scales, as they were themselves impervious to fire, and it seems that the best tools against the dragons
he actually
were taken from the dragons themselves.
joined the
a philosophy
dragons
that
after
another
that?
legendary figure, Havel, clearly took to heart, as the man cased himself in stone and took a legendary dragon tooth as his weapon. Havel, too, not only
Big
served
bonk,
the Nameless
yes.
King in the war, but also his first knight Ornstein as well, becoming the third member of a legendary trio of dragon slayers, who would eventually come to inspire the miraculous tale known as Sacred Oath. And so, it was with strength, courage, cunning, and
Havel
unity
the bonker? Yeah, that's
that
a big
the war for
bonk.
disparity was won.
Dragons shall never be forgotten. We knights fought valiantly, but for every one of them, we lost 70 of our own. Exhilaration, pride, hatred, rage. The dragons teased out our dearest emotions.
I loved him.
Thou
He
will
helped anytime.
understand one day. Me, there's very little to be said. What good is a dog with no hairs to hunt? But I'm lucky to be alive, I suppose.
With the war won, these lords were the first to face an uncomfortable truth, that their glory, much like that of the dragons, would not last
Bro
forever.
ripped a dragon tooth out
The everlasting
with his
dragons
bare hands.
were
What?
vulnerable now,
I
and
beat
were
it to
forced
death. It's
to
so
adapt
cute.
to this unfamiliar and hostile world. So they gave birth, and slowly began to mutate and deviate in their evolution. Wyverns, serpents, man-serpents, and basilisks. The imperfect, the crossbreeds,
Wait, the
and the
basilisks are
wretches.
related as well?
Dragons that spit fire, lightning, poison, and corrosion. Some even caught the undead curse. And so it was that despite Gwyn's best efforts, dragons and their kin lived on.
I love
Some
this
as
dragon though. This
unchanged
dragon
as
is
ever.
awesome.
Rumour it may be, but I have heard of a surviving ancient dragon who resides in this land. A coterie of undead
Oh,
serves the
this
dragon
one's so
as
amazing.
they're
I love
trained
this
to become
one.
dragons
And the music
themselves.
too.
Sounds unlikely, but you
Oh,
never know, do you?
As the gods really should have known, faith always finds a way. And ironically, it was the gods and not the dragons who failed to adapt. A war had been fought in the name of disparity, but Gwyn's Age of Fire was nothing of the sort. Darkness was the enemy now, and Gwyn would do anything to prevent his Age of Fire
and the darkness
from
is
ending.
basically humanity, right?
So how righteous
Actually, the
truly
Abyss
could their war against
is
the
related to
ancient,
humanity?
unchanging dragons have been when Gwyn himself refused to cede to the natural order? Thus began the betrayal of Gwyn's firstborn son. He is god of war, who allied with the remaining ancient dragons. Shamed by his firstborn's betrayal, enraged at his disobedience, and driven by that famous desire to erase all that opposed him, Gwyn disowned his firstborn son. His royal
Humans
blood
are related
was
to the
denied.
dark? Yeah.
His legacy was expunged from the annals of history, and the altars of his worship were smashed.
Wait, was that
beyond
Nameless King
recognition.
in Dark Souls 1?
His name was lost
No?
forever.
What?
But as the gods ought to know, faith always finds a way, and the Nameless King had some faithful knights indeed. Look within the rubble of these statues.
Is Priest the
Look
Sun related
amidst
to him?
the traces of the Nameless King's foot wrappings, his braces, his
Flare?
attire, and you might just spy a familiar cross-spear design belonging to the firstborn's first knight. the dragon slayer Ornstein.
Oh my
In the
god, wait,
Dragonless
what?
Age
Yeah,
that
he's been built up
followed the
since
Nameless
GS1?
King's betrayal, Ornstein was assigned to guard the Grand Cathedral. And for the captain of the 4 Knights of Gwyn, this must have been a lowly role indeed, as he wasn't even guarding Gwyn's daughter. He was guarding an illusion. Nor was he alongside his fellow knights.
That was in DS1 as well.
Instead, he was partnered with Executioner Smo, a cannibal and a glutton, someone who could never call himself Ornstein's
Unnecessary
equal.
apostrophe.
So as his fellow knights faded away, as Gwyn burned to cinder for his age, Ornstein eventually left the ruined cathedral and abandoned his post in order to search for the nameless king that he once served.
Oh.
Funnily enough, Smo, of all people, was the last knight of Gwyn
Solaire's
to
worshipping
remain at
Nameless
his
King?
post. We know this for
Solaire's even more
after
awesome
defeating
now.
Aldrich,
Oh my
we can
god.
purchase his armor, which implies that Smo, the cannibal, may well have been cannibalized himself. An ironic twist of fate that Ornstein was lucky to avoid.
You can buy
And we don't
Smo's
know
armor
exactly
after that.
where
Oh my god.
or for how long Ornstein
What?
set off in search of his nameless king. But if one attempted to trace his path, one would find evidence of the influence that these 2 men may well have left upon the world. In Ferossa, for example, we witness an order of lion knights
Aldrich
with armor
ate Smo.
blessed by a certain war
Oof.
god. Even more curiously, the figure depicted on their helmet stands his own against a dragon. In the drowned ruins of Hade,
Wait,
there's a
even in Dark
being
Souls
who
2?
aspires to the great legacy of the old dragon slayer. So is this Ornstein himself? Probably not. Though, how curious is it that a man
What? There's
inspired
Ornstein
by
in
a
Dark Souls
dragon
2?
slayer would be allied with the dragons
Okay.
that are right outside his gate?
That's
The
crazy.
world was changing, and in truth, those who aspire to conquer dragons overwhelmingly end up with them as their allies. Look to our nameless king, who was born for a war
I
against
want to be
them,
friends with
only to
Midir,
ally with
to be
the
fair.
vestiges of their race. Look to Vendrick, who inherited Gwyn's legacy
Look to
yet
Godwyn, I
aspired
guess.
to recreate their power. Look to the kingdom of
coding
Lothric,
work?
whose knights were originally
Alright.
hunters of dragons.
See you later, Gradient.
Yet
Thank
they
you for
ended
being
up
here, though.
taming them and fighting at their
You should
side.
definitely play this.
Look at Prince Rickard, who fought
should
in
play
a
this one after
stronghold
Sekiro
filled
for
with
sure.
serpents and ended up being summoned as their champion at Archdragon Peak. Look to Havel, who adopted a spine of stone and a dragon's tooth only to uphold a sacred oath with their nameless king. And finally, look to Ornstein, the dragon slayer, who, laden with duties and oaths, decided that the only one that would matter
Aw,
was his
man.
pledge to Gwyn's exiled
Ornstein's so
son.
cool.
And so it was that the way of the dragon led him to the Nameless King's stronghold. In the years after his exile, the Nameless King had tamed a storm drake, upon which he had led a lifetime of battle. Eventually, he settled here, upon Archdragon Peak. This, it appears, was a place where dragons and their kin could worship and live in peace. It was only a matter of time, after all, until Gwyn's Age of Fire would burn down to ash, and dragons, as we know, have both time and patience in abundance. Alas, an unkindled would eventually find his way here to Archdragon Peak, driven by this unstoppable desire to claim the strength of a war god,
Oh,
and
no.
to claim the strength of his ancient companions, so that Gwyn's Age of Fire could finally be brought to an end. For war is supposed to be waged for what we believe in, not to erase our opposition
I feel
from
bad
existence.
about killing him now. He was just chilling with the dragons, actually. He was just trying to chill with some dragon bros, and I just killed him. Oops. You know. Oh my gosh. That's depressing. That is so depressing. Oh. One of your favorite theories isn't covered by Vachi is that the butterflies, which control the Dragon Slayer armor, used all the abandoned suits of armor. Ooh. In order to tear it apart from the inside. You mean tear apart the castle itself? Or... That's... Wow. Lore of main and optional bosses? Oh, I hope you guys cannot hear that noise. There's some noise going on around me. It's really annoying. Let's see. Where would I find the lore of the main and optional bosses? Because this is like, I'm just looking at these playlists. Angel's Egg, DLC. I do want to see something about a DLC as well. Angels of Lothric. Let me see. Because some of this is about the NPCs and stuff. The Angels of Lothric. Okay, I will watch this one, I guess. Because I'm quite curious. Is this about NPCs? Okay, maybe.
There are 2 DLCs arriving for Dark Souls 3, and there are 2 very intriguing, unfinished plotlines that still remain in the game. And these 2 plotlines, they directly oppose one another. One, in the previous video, was a tale of Londor, and this is a tale of the Angels. That was a story of a dark wraith locked in the deepest depths, and this is a story of an angel locked in a cell in the tallest tower.
Oh yeah, I found this one.
A story about usurping the fire, and a story about linking it. A story of Karth and Frampt, of gods and men. Miyazaki, the game's creator, he takes a lot of inspiration from the manga series Berserk, and one of the most powerful themes in Berserk that I don't see a lot of
Berserk
people
has
talking about
skeleton wheels?
is the displacement
I didn't know
of
that.
good and evil in themes of light
Those look
and
like
dark.
the skelly.
For example,
Skelly
good
wheels.
is seen in the Black Swordsman and his darkness, and evil is seen in the angels and their light. Similarly, in Souls, mankind were the ones with the dark souls, and even though the gods are associated with fire and light, these gods are dedicated to selfishly keeping themselves in power at the expense of all humanity. So keep this in mind as we talk about the Angels of Dark Souls 3, because I wouldn't be surprised if Guinevere were a boss in the DLC.
Oh my god, imagine Guinevere being a boss.
The angelic faith has its roots in Lothric, where
That's crazy.
Queen Guinevere is said to have raised several heavenly children. The Lothric bloodline has always been devoted to the linking of the fire, obsessed with creating a worthy heir. And their ruler currently appears to be the young Prince Lothric, and
Vatilor of the main
engraved upon the
bosses?
doors leading to his chambers are 3 figures that represent the 3 pillars of power that uphold his rule. First, the High Priestess, whose duty it is to feed and care for the noble children. Essentially, she's their wet nurse, and it's clear that these women groom the princes for a role in the linking of the fire. They're not your traditional wet nurse, for one of them begs us to convince Lothric to follow his duty as a lord, and the other 2 sit directly within the Firelink shrines. The second pillar is the Knight,
those 2 are
responsible
different?
for the defense
I
of
kind
the
of thought
kingdom.
they were the same
The
person.
Lothric Knights were allowed to tend to the wyverns and fight alongside them, as these dragons also belong as a symbol of Lothric. And the third pillar, the Scholar, who is master of the grand archives of knowledge. And of the 3, the scholars seem the most influential, especially to our young Lord Lothric, who was frail and disinclined to knighthood. The Grand Archives and the Lothric bloodline, they also rose together, and the first of the scholars was alleged to be a private mentor to the royal prince. And here is where the story gets really fascinating.
That Crystal Sage
because
shooting
this
the whole
private
time.
mentor, the first of the scholars, he doubted the linking of the
Their
fire.
wet nurse is the old woman in
And
Dreadkeep.
it's clear that
She was Lorian's.
whoever
Oh,
he is,
wait, the old woman
he
in the
planted
beginning?
thoughts of rebellion into the young lord's mind. So these were the 3 accepted pillars of the king's rule: the High Priestess, the Knight, and the Scholar. But there was one more pillar who served Lothric on the fringes and in the shadows: the Hunters, a 4th pillar of rule, who punished the
Hunters?
king's enemies in ways that
Bloodborne?
the king's 3 pillars cannot. These were highly adept warriors, and they were known for wielding paired weapons, and some were so proficient in their duty that they even managed to serve successive generations of kings. These hunters,
Oh boy, this
specifically,
area.
became known as
I
the
do not want to
King's
go back
Black
to this
Hand.
area, I think.
And for generations, these hunters served the Lothric bloodline, and for generations their rule was clearly prosperous. However, the pillars of Lothric are crumbling when we arrive, and Prince Lothric refuses to link the fire. So bear with me.
don't blame
Once I have
him.
the groundwork laid, we can get into the really interesting angel stuff. So, in Dark Souls 1, we were introduced to Guinevere, who was firstborn daughter of Gwyn, the man who linked the fire, and this illusion of Guinevere, at least, says this.
Please, father's role thou should assume, and inheriteth the fire of our world.
In Lothric, now, Guinevere is heavily implied to be the queen of Lothric, married to King Osiris and revered as a goddess
Osiris?
of fertility and bounty.
Wait, what?
And living up to that title, she became a wife and a mother who raised several angelic children. And just like in Dark Souls 1, she's pushing undead to link the
Wait, she
fire.
was married
She's
to
one of
that
those
dragon
goddesses
dude?
that uses us. And the Lothric
No
bloodline,
way.
her children, they were obsessed with creating a worthy heir. And there's a lot more evidence of her influence in pushing undead and unkindled to link the fire. The path to the kiln itself is hidden behind the Queen's castle, and unkindled are even born with a circlet of the Way of White, which is a symbol very closely associated with Guinevere. The Queen even placed a powerful artifact in a coffin that she thought a future unkindled could profit from.
Oh, that one.
And yet, the castle is in chaos. Her husband
Cyrus
has
is
gone
the
mad,
father.
and
He
her
went
noble
mad and tried to
children
follow in Caesar's
are scattered
footsteps.
and defiant.
He's their
So
father. What?
the queen
No
does what she
way.
did in Dark Souls
And
1.
Guinevere is their
she leaves
mother?
the kingdom. And we, when we go through it, we're
way.
left to piece together how exactly this
Yo, where do
kingdom
I get this
collapsed
shield?
from
Where do I get this
her
Solaire
children
shield?
that remain. Prince Lorien and his younger
I
brother,
don't think I have
Lothric,
this one.
remain in the throne room of their castle, implying that they were the ones in power as their rule collapsed. Prince Lothric is described as the last hope of his line for linking the fire, but Lothric went against his duty and against Guinevere's legacy and refused to link the fire. When you approach their chambers, take notice of this stretch
Trading with the
leading up
crows,
to it.
really?
All the knights are facing outwards, barricades are raised, and sure, this could mean that they're protecting him from us, the unkindled, but I think that they could also be protecting Lothric from the angels and their winged knights. So this is my favorite part of the script. At the tallest point of the Grand Archives hangs this enormous cage.
Yeah, I remember
Within
this
is
one.
a corpse, white feathers, and the miracle divine pillars of light, which was a miracle of Gertrude, named the Heavenly Daughter, and in Japanese, the Angel's Daughter. Gertrude is said by many to be the Queen's child. This miracle brings down divine pillars of light, and it was
Gertrude.
told to Gertrude when she was visited by an angel. Despite losing her sight and her voice, she was blind and mute, Gertrude was still determined to record this tale of the angel's visit. Somehow, this blind, mute girl wrote down what she heard in a fragmentary scroll. And in Dark Souls 3, there's this huge tradition of placing great faith in the words of the blind. So somehow, despite being impossible for ordinary men
Oh, they're just
to
waiting up
decipher,
there?
this
Look at
tale
them.
of the angel
Oh my god.
became the foundation
Remember the
of
angels in the
angelic
drag
faith
heap?
of
Yeah, are
Lothric.
those related?
So now, our question is, what does the angelic
Those guys
faith
were
of
awful.
Lothric stand for? What do they represent? And it's my belief that all angelic references are related to the Way of White, which was a human faith of clerics, paladins, and pilgrims who are supporters of the linking of the fire and the gods. Let me provide some evidence. As you traveled
The
through
Knights
the world
worship
of Dark
those.
Souls
They
3,
worship the
sharp
angels in the
observer would have
Dragheap?
realized that there are a lot of angelic references, and I'll name 5 and convince you of their
He's just
relationship
walking around
to
like
the
this.
kingdom of Lothric. So, 1. The statues in Upper Lothric are winged, and one set of wings even belongs to a depiction of a primordial serpent. In the last episode we talked about the mention
yeah.
of Karth, and on the flip side, wouldn't it be fitting for Frampt who was this serpent in Dark Souls 1 who was a huge advocate for the linking of the fire,
Yeah.
wouldn't it make sense for him to be a manipulating force in Lothric, a rule known for the linking of the fire? Secondly, in the Cathedral of the Deep you see
Wonder what happened to
statues
them.
of winged men, and indeed the archdeacons of the Deep wear robes denoting the highest rank in the Way of White. And originally this order was not evil, they were devoted to tending to the flame. And in this video, we assumed that this meant that they were tending to the flame of Aldrich when
that
he
the one you're
became a
talking
Lord of
about?
Cinder. However, when Aldrich rose from the dead, this order of the Way of White became corrupted by his influence, and they abandoned their service to the gods. You see this in the statue, the angels, this Way of White cleric, it's overcome by Aldrich's filth. Third, the Silver Knight helms are winged, and
Oh,
indeed,
they're wings?
the Silver Knights
Right.
in particular
I always forget
are
they're
loyal
wings.
to the old royal family.
I always think they're bunny
even
ears.
protecting this family's manor long after it was abandoned. In
Bunny!
particular, though, the Silver Knight shield has the blessing of their goddess Guinevere upon it, even to this day. And Guinevere is intrinsically related
And
to the
Silver Knights
angels.
is so badass.
4 of her children, Gertrude, Lothric, Lorien, and Rosaria, they have some link to white feathers. On
Oh,
Gertrude's
Rosaria.
cage floor, Lothric's floor, and shot from the bident of the man-grub casters. And Gertrude's description
Man-grub,
actually
is that
calls
what they're
her the
called?
angel's daughter
Man-grubs.
in Japanese, not just a heavenly
Good night,
daughter.
Tony. Thanks for
These
stopping
children
by.
are linked to Guinevere, and they're linked to the angels. And finally, when I look at these beheaded statues in Lower Lothric, I think of another reference to beheading. We place the heads of the Lords of Cinder, their cinders, atop their thrones to satiate the fire-linking ritual. And I think
yeah,
these
that was kinda
statues are
gruesome.
a symbol of self-sacrifice to the linking of the fire. Look at the way they cut their own throats and hold their own heads willingly in their hands. When these were built, Lothric was known for the linking of the fire, and I think these represent that. And the final reference to beheading
Gotta
to the Way of
sacrifice
White
your brain?
are the winged executioners, who swore themselves to the angels. And their set reveals the most curious part of this story. It says that worship of these divine messengers is heresy in Lothric and unrecognized by any of the 3 pillars of rule. In an attic in the castle, behind an illusory wall, lies a giant portrait of a winged messenger.
Oh yeah, I found this one.
And a sacred shield, a shield known as Sorcerer's Bane, and an heirloom of the Way of White. Now, with all the connections we just made to the angels being supportive of the linking of the fire, the statues, the helmets, the feathers, why would Lothric call it heresy? Why build statues to something heretical? And the only solution I can come up with is that it became heresy when Lothric refused to link the fire.
They went
It is
to
said
war?
that this is why Gertrude, the heavenly daughter, was imprisoned in the lofty cell of the Grand Archives. Her faith,
That's a
previously
really
accepted,
cool
must have
prison
become
cell.
heresy when Prince Lothric took over, for he was positioned directly against it. And remember, the first of the scholars was private mentor to Prince Lothric.
That birdcage,
And
man,
of the 3
that is
pillars,
so
the scholars are closest
atmospheric.
to the prince. And it is the scholars themselves who tampered with the sacred chime of Gertrude, allowing her blessed item to be used for their own ends. And in a huge way, the scholars were behind Lothric's refusal to link the fire, and, in turn, Lothric's persecution of the angels. It's no wonder that Guinevere fled the kingdom. And one of the earliest lore questions I ever had in Dark
Guinevere
Souls 3,
left,
you
yeah.
might remember it, was why an executioner was patrolling a burning courtyard full of headless knights. Why this was the scene of a battle. And now I think I know why. I think Gertrude's imprisonment was the beginning of a conflict between the crown and the angels. Lothric knights and winged knights never fight together, and both lower and upper Lothric have corpses from each side
yeah.
within the castle itself. Additionally, the assassins close to the crown prince, the Black Hand, one of their rings is on the roof where 3 fully ascended, golden winged knights
Oh my
guard the
God.
entrance to Gertrude's cell. A King's Black Hand assassin, loyal to Prince Lothric, was here, and he was killed. So now we come
These guys
to
are
the part
crazy.
where the answer is very much up to you. Is Gertrude the corpse in the cell, perhaps killed by the King's Black Hand, or simply dead of starvation? Or is Gertrude's cell door open because she escaped, flown away by one of the winged knights? Or is Gertrude alive and in-game? Is she related to this man grub, bizarrely placed on the rafters below her cell?
Oh my God.
Is Gertrude Rosaria?
What?
If I'm not mistaken, the first one to come up with this theory was Reddit user
That's an
Deleted
interesting
Away,
theory.
who in particular reminded me of the Deacon's relationship to the Way of White, of Saint Klimt, and also of the Dark Wraith far below and the Angel up above. I am hugely thankful that he reminded me of these connections, because it's become a really important part of the story. So, why is this man grub here? Is Gertrude Rosaria? The man grubs are creatures that have been reborn through Rosaria, Mother of Rebirth,
not a great
located in the
rebirth,
Cathedral
to be
of
fair.
the Deep, and worshipped by some as a goddess. Rosaria's fingers collect tongues in her name. Some do it to be reborn. Indeed, if you hand in more than 5, you're said to run the risk of turning into a man grub. But some simply give her tongues to
Imagine
help
if that
comfort
actually happened
their
in the game
voiceless
when you
goddess.
do the rebirth.
For Rosaria,
That would be
Mother
funny.
of Rebirth,
Like,
was robbed
surprise,
of her tongue by
you're a
her
grub.
firstborn, and has been waiting for their return ever since. We talked earlier about how the Archdeacons of the Deep are high-ranking within the Way of White, and
Oh, it's got
we've
all the
established that the Way of
cradles.
White are devoted to the servitude of the gods
Just like
and their
Renala.
Age of Fire, so it makes sense that the Cathedral of the Deep would have been a safe place for Gertrude to escape
I
to.
think I noticed that
or
before.
at least why a daughter of Guinevere could reside in this place. Even if you don't believe that Gertrude is Rosaria, and I do have my doubts,
Imagine a Dark
it's
Souls run where
incredibly
you're stuck as a
likely that
grub, yeah?
Rosaria is a daughter of Guinevere, given
Grub
the
challenge.
feathers and given the fact that she has one of Guinevere's miracles as a part of her soul. So you don't have to believe that Gertrude is Rosaria, but Rosaria is here for a reason. And as we know, the Deacons of the Deep became completely corrupted by Aldrich's influence. In fact, all 3 archdeacons are characterized by an abandonment of their duty in the Way of White. One in particular,
That's a
though,
long grub
he was
percent.
originally tasked with attending
Yeah, for
to
sure.
Rosaria, Mother of Rebirth. His name was Saint Klimt, and we hear about him from his weapon, the Saint's Bident, which he eventually discarded. This Bident was a holy symbol, which draws upon faith. You see this Bident, actually, when man-grub casters attack you. This exact shape materializes, leaving behind a trail of
It
white
looks like
feathers.
that, yeah.
Assumedly, this is a symbol of Klimt's relationship with Rosaria through the Bident, and Rosaria's connection to the Way of White
Ooh.
through the feathers.
Grubs.
Or, by now, if you believe this theory about her being Gertrude, maybe I should be calling Rosaria Gertrude. However, like the other deacons abandoning their duty to the
snack.
linking of the fire,
Joe
Klimt
Biden
discarded
said
this
what?
weapon and put his faith behind him. So, if you believe the theory that Gertrude was Rosaria, then she was
It's his
forced
weapon
out
of
Lothric
choice,
because
apparently,
the angelic faith was
you
lost
know?
there, and after taking the name Rosaria in her new refuge, the Cathedral of the Deep, she was trapped there too, once the deacons became corrupted by the Deep.
Oh man, the room that she's
So,
in though,
again,
it's actually
the Way
really
of White
cool.
And the angels
Like it's
would
very
have been
atmospheric.
cast out of Lothric, essentially, so there might still have been
Ooh.
refuge in the Cathedral of the Deep, where the deacons
Joe
still
Biden
served the
build.
Way of White. So that makes sense for
DS3
Rosaria or
challenge.
Gertrude to be placed there. But after they turned to Aldrich, Rosaria would be in trouble. And you sort of see that when you look outside her chambers. There are man-grubs infesting the cathedral, and they're defending her. They're staked to the walls, maybe in
Oh.
defense of their goddess, and there are bars that are bent outwards, and a lot of sludge around the area, so maybe Aldrich
didn't notice
tried to get in
that.
there when he was on his way out.
Somebody
So
tried
this
to get in
entire
or
plot
tried
about
to get
Gertrude
out.
being Rosaria, it's a fantastic theory and one of the best in the series because of all the little circumstantial pieces of evidence, even if I'm not totally convinced. And it isn't perfect. It doesn't explain the corpse in the cage, or why Rosaria supposedly an
You should
angel
definitely do
instructs
that.
her followers
Faith
to
Dex
invade
build.
and pillage. On the other hand, Gertrude taught her
You should do
followers
that. It'll
bountiful
be funny.
light, and Rosaria's soul teaches us bountiful sunlight, a more powerful version of the same spell. if we get more information in the DLC, which I think we will, we'll come back to this topic. But
Can
for
you
now,
beat Dark Souls
the
3
only
as
thing
Joe? But
that
you know,
matters
Castle,
is,
I'm sure that video
what
will
do
go
you think?
viral if you make that video.
It's been a while since the
You
Way
should
of Light
absolutely go for
surfaced
it.
in such
Yeah.
a powerful way. In Dark Souls 1, they sent an undead paladin to fetch the Rite of Kindling deep within the catacombs, and it was the start of a convenient way of disposing of undead within their ranks, and they continued to send their undead to Lordran on this quest, convincing them it was a holy pilgrimage. You know, if they succeed, if they brought back the Rite of Kindling, then great, but if they failed, then the Way of White just disposed of some undead. And in Dark Souls 3, the Way of White continues to use humans for kindling, and assuming the Way of White are the angels, they're presented as angelic, as good, as holy, but the reality is that them and Guinevere, likely at
Walter
their head,
White build?
are anything but.
And only use
They've been using
crystal?
humanity for
Oh my
kindling,
god.
and I think we'll be getting the
That
chance
would be fun.
for a little
I like
bit of
that.
revenge soon. The day before I finished this script, user Ravenbiter_114
Gotta get to that
made a
old
thread on Reddit
age. Oh
with
my
evidence
god.
that Guinevere will be in the
Yeah.
DLC, citing an unused boss track
For sure.
that sounds very much like Guinevere's theme from Dark Souls 1. Have a listen.
Oh, I love her theme. I love it. It was so good.
I'd say they're onto something here.
I don't know.
And even if it's
Is
not
it really
Guinevere,
that similar?
it could be someone related to her. So, with Gamescom coming up, I expect we'll be hearing about DLC soon. But what will it be? About the Hollows of Londor? The Angels of Lothric? Or will I be pleasantly surprised and it'll be something else entirely?
I think it was something
Thanks for watching
else.
this video, and thank
Probably.
you to those who support me on Patreon.
I like how he's.
In the description,
We
I'm
can
going
like
to
be
leave a
sure
link
that he's
to
wrong
tons
now
of other
about some of this
theories,
stuff.
and some are quite different to mine on the nature of the angels in Dark Souls 3. So read up and come to your own conclusions. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next.
Oh my gosh. You have to do Yuria's questline to make Hollow. Oh my god, bro. You guys. You guys are crazy. You guys are crazy. Okay, what was it you said, Cassie? You said it was main boss's lore, right? DS3 main boss? I think? Oh my god. Lore of the main bosses? I think that was the one, right? And now I'm getting Chinese ads. Yay! Okay.
The stories of Souls games have always revolved around bosses, but that statement has never been
Soul
more
Stream.
true than for Dark Souls 3. If you understand who you're killing in this game, then you will understand the story.
Okay.
The
I don't
first
think
one
I
in your
understood
way
like at
is
least
Udex
half of
Gundyr,
them.
the Ashen Judge and scabbard to the coiled sword of the shrine. This sword is bequeathed only
Goku?
to chosen Ash, who can
Yeah, do
best him
Goku.
in battle. But before he was the Ashen
still waiting for
Judge,
the man grub
Gundyr
build.
walked through this place much like we did, on his way to meet his Firekeeper and link the fire. Charged with a duty and granted a cast iron halberd that would never crumble, Gundyr arrived, late, greeted by a shrine without fire and a bell that would not toll. The flame had already faded, and his Firekeeper had been thrown into the depths of the bell tower, grave of Firekeepers past.
He was just late to
She
the
never
party?
met her champion, and the ensuing tragic farce became a favorite tale of the masses. And after he was bested by an unknown warrior, which is probably us, Gundyr the champion became sheathed to a coiled sword in the hopes that someday the first flame would be linked once more. Perhaps Gundyr, with his unbreakable halberd, was fated to eternal service from the beginning. Since it's implied that Gundyr expected to meet a Firekeeper,
Man grab is just
he was
SL1
likely
fist
meant
only.
as a candidate for linking the fire. Those
You need those
capable of
Nutella
linking the fire
biscuits?
are named
Oh,
Lords of
I
Cinder,
totally didn't pay attention
beings
to the
capable of
ad, but
bringing back
yeah.
the world from the brink of darkness by
Nutella bit.
linking
You don't
the
have
first
those, I
flame.
guess?
Indeed, the game speaks of 3 Lords of Cinder who have already linked the fire.
Oh yeah, I see
and
them here.
They're being resurrected as a last
If you want
resort
some, I can
to
send you
link
some,
it
don't worry.
Once again. In the opening cutscene, you saw them. Aldrich, Saint of the Deep, Yorm the Giant, and Farron's Abyss Watchers. Each of these lords once had an age of their own, and the remnants of their age lives on in Dark Souls 3 and in their resurrection. For example, Aldrich is linked to these bosses and their stories. The Abyss Watchers are linked here, and those in Lothric are conjoined
the Crystal
here.
Sage as well.
For simplicity's sake, we're going to discuss these stories in 3 chunks, starting with Aldrich, Pontiff Sullivan, Vort, and the Dancer, who all reside in the Boreal Valley. The Boreal Valley is currently ruled over by
Nutella
Pontiff
isn't even
Sullivan,
the real Nutella?
a tyrant
What?
who sends his
does that
outrider knights
mean?
to serve as his
It's
watchful
fake?
eyes and his guards. And the first knight of Pontiff Sullivan we meet is Vort, an outrider knight who ambushes us as we attempt to leave Lothric. So
Fake
the outrider
Nutella?
knight's
What?
job is to keep an eye on things. Sullivan's knights are also described as his watchful eyes and his punitive blades. Each outrider knight is provided with a ring by the pontiff, which transforms them into frenzied beasts and lures them into battles of death. Specifically, the 2 main outrider knights we
Hydrogenated?
see
Is that how you
on
say
the high
that?
wall of Lothric appear at both points of progression in the area, so perhaps they serve as strategically placed guards in order to hinder our progression, and for Sullivan to
I
keep
just
an eye
expect
on the
Nutella in
road.
America to be about 10 times
When
as
you went
sweet
through
as
Irithyll,
anywhere
I'm sure you
else.
noticed those ghosts that
Is
seem
that
to be
about right?
walking the streets. Well, they likely represent the Outrider Knights before their departure and descent into madness, because 2 in particular are very interesting. They walk together, one man, one female,
Oh my gosh.
and the woman wears the mask of the dancer. Vort was never far from the fleeting dancer, who watches over Emma in Lothric's Grand Cathedral. The dancer is far more intriguing
They were
than
just
Vort is.
used
The
by
pontiff ordered her to
Pontiff?
serve as a dancer,
That's sad.
and then he ordered her to serve as his outrider knight. He bestowed enchanted swords upon her, one dark and one light, mirroring his own. Eventually, the black eyes of the pontiff transformed her into a beastly creature, her gauntlets fusing with her own hide.
Aww.
The fascinating thing about the dancer, though, is who she was before she became Sullivan's pet. It's a very popular theory that she is one
So
of
which
the
place
3
has a
daughters
real
of
Nutella
Guinevere
is my
who appear
question.
in-game.
Now I'm
Here's the
thinking about
evidence.
Nutella.
Her Aurora Veil is said to be an article of the old gods, which is permitted only for direct descendants of the old royal family. The dancer's soul can also be transposed to give you the spell Soothing Sunlight, miracle of Guinevere of the old royalty. Guinevere used to reside in Anor Londo, home of the gods,
It does
and
kind of prove
her
a
line
connection, I
continues
guess.
in Lothric. So Guinevere was also revered as a goddess of fertility and bounty. She raised many heavenly children, and the dancer, having one of the 3 sunlight spells, is clearly one of them. And of course, as you know, Pontiff Sullivan, the tyrant,
Too bad
now
we don't
rules
know.
over Irithyll
We don't know what
and
happened to
Anor
Guinevere
Londo.
exactly.
So it's my belief that Sullivan gained power within Anor Londo, then proclaimed himself pontiff, and ordered Guinevere's daughter to serve
She
as his
looks
dancer,
fertile. Yeah,
and
legit.
then outrider knight. The royal family was usurped and devoured and torn apart by Sullivan.
I
who
love
Yorshka
Guinevere
says
myself. Like,
wrongfully
I think
proclaimed
she's
himself
fabulous.
Pontiff. Even after the family's passing, the Silver Knights looked over their manor and the ruined cathedral. The story behind Pontiff Sullivan's rise to power is told lightly, with only clues peeking above the surface. But in a nutshell, I believe Pontiff Sullivan took over Anor Londo from within, probably with the help of the
Ooh.
Deacons of the Deep.
That parry.
The only ones in his way were the Dark Moon Knights.
The Dark Moon Knights were once led by my elder brother, the Dark Sun Gwendolyn, but he was stricken by illness. And
Oh, it's so
leadership
weird
of
to
the
hear
knights
Melena's
fell to me.
voice all the time.
Then Sullivan wrongfully proclaimed himself pontiff.
She
and
fled
took
from
me
Anor
prisoner.
Londo, married a flame
Where
god.
could my dear brother be?
She returned to Lothric.
So when I say that Pontiff
married
Sullivan took
Osiris.
over
Wow.
Anor Londo from within, it is speculation on my part, but my reasoning is that he knew of Gwendolyn, and he knew of Yorshka, and he wrongfully proclaimed himself pontiff, which all imply that he was a part of the system already. A pontiff is essentially a high priest, and the miracles, the weaponry, and the rings of the Dark Moon all rely on faith. Additionally, there's a bit more evidence that the pontiff was a part of the Dark Moon system already.
I'm
The
jealous of
sword in his
Osiris.
left hand
Yeah,
is
me
a
too.
ceremonial sword
Me too.
representing the judgment of
I
the moon.
love Guinevere. I think
However,
she's
its magic is
amazing.
far closer to sorcery than any existing lunar power. Its dark blue hues, deeper than the darkest moon, reflect Sorcerer Sullivan's true nature. Yoshka calls Sullivan a tyrant, which can mean someone who elects themselves ruler without legal right. This, along with his greatsword of judgment that references the moon, furthers that idea that he took over from within, the figurehead of a movement that was abandoning their faith in favor of Sullivan's true calling,
First person.
dark sorceries. And the same sort of shift was happening amongst the Deacons of the Deep, who we find all throughout Anor Londo. Originally, though, they were a group of clergymen dedicated to sealing away the potential horrors of the deep.
Right.
Deep protection,
but they were
tells us
also
that the
corrupted
deep
by
was
it.
Originally a peaceful and sacred place, its deacons wearing dark red robes denoting their blessing of fire. Over time, however, the deep became the final rest for many abhorrent things, and indeed, human dregs
Those
were
things,
likely
I did
some
not
of
like
those
those things.
as the dregs of humanity are said to sink to the lowest depths imaginable, forming the bedrock of the world. Those who linger too long on the brink of the deep will often slip, and lurking within the deep are insects which tear open the skin and burrow into flesh. Eventually, those dedicated to sealing away the horrors of the deep
You still have nightmares being
succumb
stuck
to
on
its very
Frida?
power. An example of
SL1?
this
Oh,
is
I
their
would
Tome
not
of
want to try
Knowledge,
SL1,
which was
I don't
originally
think.
intended to teach
I would probably
divine
be stuck
protection,
on
but
everything.
It had dark tales added to its pages, making it a thing most profane. And along with this descent, presumably, was Aldrich, Saint of the Deep.
A right and proper cleric. Only he developed a habit of devouring men.
He's
He
bro.
ate so many that he
Until he fights you,
bloated
that
like a
is.
drowned pig, then softened into sludge. So they stuck him in the Cathedral of the Deep, and they made him a Lord of Cinder, not for virtue, but for might.
Aldrich was this simple saint who became a hugely powerful being, eventually chosen, maybe willingly,
Aldrich's
and maybe
name
not,
in Chinese
to
is so
become a
long,
Lord
man.
of Cinder and Link the Fire.
I can't even read like all of it. I'm like, huh?
The deacons tended to the flame, and I'm
Soul of
perhaps
Cinder is the
inclined to
hardest
believe
SL1
that
boss?
This meant that maybe they were tending to the flame of Aldrich when he was a
Also,
Lord
watch
of
Hawkwood's
Cinder.
lore. Yeah, that guy's a
And
bro.
whether this is true or not, we do know that the deacons eventually succumbed to the horrors
He's
of
a
the
real
deep,
bro.
and neither tending to the flame nor the faith could save them. You would have noticed that many deacons cast Dark Soul sorceries, which were imparted to them by Archdeacon MacDonald, an adherent of Aldrich who was largely responsible for the corruption of the deacons. Archdeacon MacDonald delighted in the cathedral's stagnating souls. For him, they represented the glorious bedrock of this world. Under the guidance of Archdeacon MacDonald, these deacons became both clergymen and sorcerers. The Archdeacon's sin, as it's called, was to channel faith for sorcery, which transformed his staff from a symbol of religious authority into a catalyst of dark sorceries. The deacons, they still had faith, but it was not in fire any longer. It was in Aldrich, Saint of the Deep, their master.
Yeah, they were corrupted.
Upon his resurrection,
Everybody's
Aldrich,
corrupted
like
in
many
this world.
Lords of Cinder, ruminated on the fading of the fire. For him, it inspired visions. He saw beyond.
I think I
the
was
age of
corrupted in
fire
this
to
game.
the age of deep
I was
waters,
like,
and
enough fire, no
becoming
more
age
fire.
Of the deep sea, filled with new purpose.
Deep
He knew what
sea.
he had to do. He would devour the gods himself. When we get to the Deacons of the Deep, we expect to find Aldrich in his coffin, but he's already left for his home in the Boreal Valley. The deacons here are led by Archdeacon Royce, who is one of the 3 archdeacons who remained behind to keep eternal watch
Did you finish
over
your
his
stream?
master's coffin, hoping that one day he would return. Aldrich left behind a small
Aldrich is
doll
powerful
in his
because he can
coffin
gain new
that
abilities
Pontiff
by
Sullivan
dreaming?
gave to his most valued
What?
subjects. Wherever you go, the moon sets in Irithyll. Wherever you may be, Irithyll is your home. When Aldrich left, Archdeacon MacDonald went with him.
Scary
we come across
doggos.
MacDonald in the depths of Anor Londo, and MacDonald,
I'm
like
good.
many
We're
other
just watching
deacons,
some
is
lore.
obese. He's huge, and I see that
He
as
is
a
pretty
legacy
big.
of Aldrich, who derived power from gluttony. They're clearly mimicking him. In Anor Londo,
you take your
Archdeacon
break?
MacDonald
Oh,
came
you're
to
gonna go
lead
back
the
to streaming?
Aldrich faithful,
Jeez.
who are defenders, who exist to ensure that Aldrich,
grinding.
devourer of gods, remains undisturbed. And when we come across Aldrich, we realize why he wants to be undisturbed. Because Pontiff Sullivan, with a devourer of gods by his side, has imprisoned a god of the old royalty in the abandoned cathedral to be fed to the devourer.
Ooh.
Gwendolyn, son of Gwyn and prior leader of the Darkmoon Knights, was gradually devoured by Aldrich. As Aldrich slowly devoured the god of
Trying
the
to
Dark
get max
Moon,
watch
he
hours.
dreamt. In this dream, he saw
McDonald
the form
had
of a
too much
young
McDonald.
male girl in hiding.
Oh yeah.
And we know this is
Oh my
Yorshka,
god.
who was sister to
Yeah, the
Gwendolyn,
whole theme is
and
like
a
gluttony,
half-breed
right?
Who is
In this
parallel to
area.
Priscilla from Dark Souls 1. But the interesting thing about this is the dream that Aldrich had, because apparently Aldrich only needs to dream about someone to learn their skills, for he uses Priscilla's life hunt scythe in battle.
Oh.
And this fact that
Yeah,
he
what
can
actually
learn
happened to
things through
Priscilla?
his visions has some interesting implications, because Aldrich is clearly wielding a
She just gone?
greatsword
Is she
upon
eaten?
the end of his spear, which lends credit towards this theory that Aldrich has devoured Nito in some capacity, and he is called the Devourer of Gods, plural, after all.
That's true.
So another question becomes, did Aldrich also devour Nito? Well, he has the wispy Nito-like cloak with skulls within it, but I think it's more likely that these skulls are just remnants of other humans that he's devoured. You have to remember there is no concrete evidence that he has devoured
Are the two
Nito,
painted worlds the
and I
same
personally
snack?
think
I don't
it's more
know.
likely
Like,
that he
I think they're
simply
definitely
dreamt up
related
the Grave
because
Lord spell in a similar manner to which
there's
he
like
dreamt
one
up the
place
Life Hunt
in the
scythe from
DS3
Yorshka.
painted world that's like
But
the
what you
same
think
as the one
shapes
from
the story
DS1
here,
painted
so
world.
let me know. So that's
Like
all
the
of
same as
Pontiff's
Priscilla's arena?
lackeys explained for the most
Yeah,
part.
but I don't know if it's like
And the
the
biggest
same
unanswered
or
questions here
what it means.
to go into
What does it
in
mean?
other videos is what exactly the relationship between Salavan and the deacons is, and in what order this story of corruption and treachery played out. Because
I actually do
timeline
want to
is
know what
always
happened
one
to
of the
Priscilla,
hardest
though.
things to get right in the
Is it
Souls
just she's
series.
dead because we
But the
killed her in
biggest
DS1?
Curiosity, in my opinion,
It could be.
and the one that really interests
Oops.
me are Aldrich's visions of the age of the deep sea. From a being, remember, that has visions so accurate he can learn spells from those visions.
It's so many
in
people,
a
soul
franchise
gain
that's
power.
entirely
It's too
self-contained within
dangerous.
this age of fire and its
Yeah.
cycles, this
Miyazaki
vision of
forgot
the deep
about
sea,
her.
it's pretty much the
Maybe.
only mention
Or maybe it's
of a
just
different
canon that we
future.
killed her,
And
right?
its appearance in these descriptions feels so out of place that I almost expect it to be referenced in the future in some capacity. Assuming it's not just a reference to Bloodborne, maybe this indicates what Miyazaki is doing next on one of his projects, or maybe we'll see something related to this in the DLC. Moving on. Something set Sullivan down this path.
I mean,
When Sullivan was a young sorcerer, he discovered the profaned capital, and down there he discovered an
DLC was all
unfading
painted
flame
world.
below a distant tundra of Irithyll, and when he found this, a burning ambition took root within him. The profaned flame. The origins of it aren't known, but we do know a few things. We know it's an unfading flame, we know that it can be manipulated, and we know that it swallows the hearts of those who wield it. The pontiff himself imbued his greatsword with this fire, and he also gave it to his holy knights. Shortly
Oh,
after
man.
he did this,
I'm
the
getting
fire
PTSD
witches
from this
had their
area.
hearts swallowed by the flame.
Frida took her
And
place?
as one last example of its corrupting influence, the handmaidens
Really?
who wield it down in the
Frida's
profaned
actually
capital,
following
their
Priscilla?
dagger says that they take pleasure in wounding others.
They do
And,
both have a
of course,
scythe,
the pontiff himself doesn't exactly have a very good moral compass.
Ooh.
But apart from that, we know precious little about the profaned flame, and this has been the hardest part of the script to write for me, because the profaned flame defies all categorization as flames that have existed previously in the series. So I'm going to work on my theories on it, and
Is it a
while I'm doing
Frenzy
that, I'll list
Flame
those theories in
reference?
the description, because I could talk about this thing for a very long time without actually
Read
getting
item
anywhere.
descriptions.
But the final thing, and maybe the most important
Okay, I
thing we
will,
know
I
about
will.
the profaned flame is that Yorm the Giant became a lord
I'm
of
not a very
Cinderland
good
to put
scholar.
it to rest. Now, clearly, Yorm was not successful, because the profaned flame has infiltrated almost all of Irithyll and set a lot of events in motion.
Frenzy flame
this
is a
just adds
profane
even
flame.
more
Yeah.
tragedy to Yorm's tale. Yorm is the descendant of an ancient conqueror, and
seems
was
like it.
asked by the very people once subjugated to lead them, serving as both a weighty blade and a stone-hard shield. Yorm fought unflinchingly as a one-man vanguard, but one day he lost the one he wished to protect.
The room that he's in is so
he
cool,
threw down
though.
his great shield and added a left-handed notch to his machete instead, so he could two-hand it, for he no longer had anything left to protect.
What a
All the
chat.
while,
Yeah, this
his
guy's so
human
cool.
subjects appeared quite disrespectful of him. They were insincere when they called him a lord, and they doubted him. He is called Lonely Yorm in his cinders, and perhaps that's because he lost the one he wished to protect, or perhaps because he didn't have the love of his people. At some point, the profaned flame became a real problem in the capital, for according to his cinders, Yorm decided to sacrifice himself and become a Lord of Cinder to put the profaned flame to rest. I don't know why Yorm decided that, hey, I'm gonna put out fire with fire, because when he did this, fire rained down from the sky.
Doesn't that just mean the fires
incinerated
become
naught
one,
but
though?
human
Like
flesh.
they become
This is an
the
interesting
same fire?
insight into who the linking of the fire consumes.
Give the people
It
access to
consumed
his only
humans
weakness.
and
That's
humans
true.
alone,
The sword.
And you see their disfigured, smelted corpses all around Yorm's chamber.
Oh my. Oh my.
Before he linked the fire, however, Yorm left behind two storm rulers, which was a legendary greatsword, also known as the Giant Slayer, for the residual strength of storm that brings giants to their knees. So this thing could kill giants, and one he gave to the humans who doubted him. He called them out on their cowardly words and gave them a weapon capable of killing him.
But nobody took it.
And the other storm ruler he gave to a dear friend
until
in
Onion
return
Bro.
for a promise. This dear friend was Sigurd, who journeys to the profaned capital in order to uphold his promise and slay his old friend. Presumably, Yorm asked Sigurd to kill him if he ever betrayed his duty, and Sigurd does so, seeing that Yorm has not returned to link the fire once again. The profaned capital also had its sorcerers, who claimed heirship to the legacy of the renowned scholar Big Hat Logan, even going so far as to emulate the type of staff he used. But halfway across the world, I know of two crystal sages who emulated him even more closely. These crystal sages served as spiritual guides to the scholars of Lothric's grand archives, and one of them went on to ally with the Undead Legion. The Undead Legion of Farron was a caravan of undead, dedicated to the eradication of the Abyss wherever it was found. The Abyss Watchers, as they were called, follow the duty and the form of the Wolf Knight of Dark Souls 1, known as Artorias the Abyss Walker.
Yeah, Artorias.
They are essentially
Best boss
his
in Dark
legacy.
Souls 1.
They made their home in Farron Keep, and high above Farron Keep lies an emaciated old wolf. The Abyss Watchers, for their
Frank
hunting
Capinel
of the
is
Abyss,
favorite
they
NPC. He's
required
running a
some
strength
art that went
sorcery.
beyond any
Is he
existing
actually?
art.
I guess. He's got a big
Wolfsblood,
bonk,
the
right?
legacy of Artorias provided just that. Their pointed steel
You like
helm
Manus?
became shirked as this sinister omen by the
Hi,
masses.
floppy disk.
Because
How's your
think
day?
about it, if you saw that pointed steel helmet coming towards your kingdom, you knew you were in trouble, because these guys are dedicated to taking out the Abyss. And indeed,
Brilliant, skip
their
brain
home
day.
in Farron might just be
The
set
brain
above
workout.
such a kingdom. For below
Do some
are the
brain
catacombs
reps.
of Carthus, and
IQ
sealed within a
reps.
goblet, deep below in the catacombs, is the encounter with High Lord Wolnir, a ruler who succumbed to the Abyss. Before succumbing to the Abyss, Wolnir was a conqueror. He ruled over the people of Carthus of the Sands, formidable warriors who were masters of the curved sword, and also of pyromancies that enhanced the effectiveness of their curved swords. The swordsmen
because the
attached
arena is
great
very much
value
like
to
the
victory at all
Four
costs,
Kings as well,
for where
like the
was honor
darkness.
in death. They lived for their High Lord Wolnir, who was conqueror of most lands known to their people, and you can see why
I
they
hated
loved
this
him.
area.
In Wolnir's time,
I got so
there were
stuck in
other
this
lords
area.
who had their crowns rightfully bequeathed upon them, but Wolnir brought them to their knees and ground their crowns to dust, forming his own crown from theirs, for he was the one High Lord, keen to outlive all others. Reminds me a lot of what we did in Dark Souls 2. Anyway, somehow, Wolnir himself fell to the abyss, and he was gripped by this fear of true darkness, and he pleaded to the gods for the first time. In our boss fight with him, there is a darkness below Wolnir, and it's struggling to consume him. But Wolnir had his holy sword, and he had 3 armlets which he had stripped from the corpses of clerics, and these things gave him some semblance of comfort. Of course,
you just woke up?
Destroy the bracelets.
Well, good morning. I'm very good. I'm enjoying the videos.
While he was in the abyss, however, Wolnir was not inactive.
Now, Wolnir's
Black
concept is so
this
cool.
pyromancy that was discovered from the abyss by Wolnir, which went on to inspire the black arts of his grave wardens. The grave warden
kind of too bad that he's
pyromancy
such a
tome was
gimmicky
developed
fight
by
because his
grave
concept is like really
wardens
cool.
Who discovered his pyromancies. And going back up for a second, Wolnir and the abyss, their proximity to the Abyss Watchers probably isn't coincidence. In fact, it makes quite a lot of sense for Karthus to be one of the kingdoms that the Abyss Watchers toppled.
I wonder.
So let's go back up to the Abyss Watchers for a second and see if this theory holds any weight.
You kind of notice that a lot of bosses grow bigger, though, compared to like their story.
Their shared wolf's blood served their mandate as lords. Essentially, it met the requirements. To gain access to the Abyss Watchers, you have to extinguish 3 flames. And I always wondered why this ritual existed. It felt very video gamey and out of place.
Oh, I hated those guys.
I went through once more recently, and I looked really closely at the engravings behind each flame. One looks like the 4 kings, one looks like Nito, and one looks like the Bed of Chaos.
Oh yeah.
3 of the main lords in Dark Souls 1.
You guys mentioned that to me.
These were the souls you had to collect to gain access to Gwyn and open a giant stone door. So these are likely here to symbolize that, right? We're extinguishing 3 flames and we're opening the door that explains the ritual. Anyway, that's more a piece of trivia than anything.
Yeah, that's like a direct reference.
After the Legion's Watchers became Lords of Cinder,
that's so cool.
The wolf blood dried up, and Farron was consumed by a festering wood. Dark wraiths began to roam, the keep fell to ruins.
So are the dark wraiths like related to the ringed knights?
The Abyss Watchers, upon
being
feel like
they look a little bit
to
similar.
link the fire once more, may have been affected by the Abyss as well. So here's the theory. The Abyss Watchers were driven to seek out the Abyss,
coffee drinker, but you're
right?
fasting. Oh,
well,
so you can't have coffee right now?
Upon their resurrection,
that sucks.
The Abyss, far below in the catacombs of Karthus, crept into the Abyss Watchers themselves. This would explain why the Abyss Watchers are locked into endless combat.
I mean, Zach is brave enough to reference Bed of Chaos.
Abyss,
you know, I'm going to say that boss wasn't that bad.
So they're locked into endless
When you have
combat.
a shield, it's okay.
When I read this theory in the comments, something else clicked as well.
Controversial take by Anna.
Which belonged to Artorias, who fell to the Abyss, says that the armor of the Abyss Watchers suggests their own eventual end. So the game is drawing a parallel here between Artorias and the Abyss Watchers. It's saying that the armor of the Abyss Watchers
the only thing I don't understand is why does the Abyss corrupt everybody?
And here's the really interesting
thing. If it's part of human nature, when you look closely at their armor, you realize it has black shouldn't that just be a natural thing for humans?
Up. So the armor is showing
or
us
maybe it's because they're not human.
Abyss. Probably. This theory isn't concrete, and no one should take it as such. But I think it's the best explanation
and the Ring Knights
for their
had their weapons
infighting.
forged in the Abyss.
It's my favorite explanation, anyway. And mostly, this one was all you guys, so thank you. Onwards to Lothric.
Oh, there's a lot
of
parts
here. The Knights of Lothric were hunters of dragons,
is a long one.
explaining their affinity with lightning and why they worshipped the sun. They have since tamed dragons.
Expect you to make a DSM boss tier list for the Bed of Chaos and X. No, definitely not.
Is one of the 3 pillars of Lothric since ancient times, and it shares place alongside the wyverns as a symbol
but
of
I thought
Lothric.
Nito was way worse,
However,
just so you know. I thought Nito because they have run back
and they're told only in
and losing half your health when you enter the boss room.
The Dragonslayer
and the gank and everything. I think Nito is one of the worst bosses in there.
The sporting hunts they shared together. When we fight against it, the armor retains its master's fighting style, but now it has a new master, the Pilgrim Butterfly.
Yeah, the butterflies. Okay, that's
now,
what
the soul of the
you were saying, Casso, right?
Is the only mention of these butterfly creatures, so speculation abounds whenever you talk about them. When you look up at them closely, though, closer than the game intends you to ever get, you'll see that they're flesh and bone, and they're almost bent backwards with a rib cage jutting outwards. Now, their name is one of the biggest clues that we have, and
Best
the
of
word
chaos.
pilgrim makes me think of the pilgrims of Londor, who all died on their way.
Definitely
to
not the
peak of
best,
Lothric.
but
And just like these pilgrim butterflies fly upwards to the
Just
peak
kinda
of
meh.
Lothric as well. And in both these cases, with the pilgrims and the pilgrim butterflies, we have no real idea why either of them are going up. So perhaps we'll learn more if we ever get Londor-themed DLC, and
I don't think
I
we
think
did.
that's pretty likely.
Mm.
I'm going to list two
I don't know
other
if it's-
theories in the description about the butterflies, because
Was
the bottom
Londor?
line
It was
is
not in the
we don't
DLC.
know what they are.
I guess.
Next is the archives. And
Tomb of
beyond
Giant was
the
a
archives
misconcept?
is
Yeah.
Prince Lothric and his
I was
brother,
like, no.
Lorien. Curiously,
That area
these are
was
the only Lords of
not
Cinder
great.
who were not featured in the opening cutscene of Lords being resurrected, and I believe that's because they never linked the fire. And I think their rejection of linking the fire might have
Right.
been what set all of the desperate
They were kind of
resurrections
skipped.
into motion. This is just a theory, but I think it's backed up by most of these descriptions and this dialogue.
Prince Lothric is in your hands. Please save his soul. Tell him
Yeah.
that he must.
So he refused to link the fire, just like me.
So, there's Prince Lothric and Lorien, his brother. Lorien is the eldest, and before he was crippled, he was a knight who single-handedly slayed a demon prince, the victory eternally scorching his sword with flame. The Cinders of a Lord state that the Lothric bloodline was obsessed with creating a worthy heir. They needed someone to link the flame, and for some reason Prince Lorien did not suffice. So they put their faith in their next born, Prince Lothric, as his throne states, last hope of his line.
Okay, so he's
Prince
the youngest
Lothric,
one.
destined to be a Lord of Cinder,
Yeah.
was
It
born
was a younger
into
brother,
swaddling
right? The other one's
clothes
older
used in
brother.
ancient prayer, and they are all that he has ever worn. He was cherished by the royal family, despite being
That's a
born
big
into
bed.
illness, a frail
Yeah, it looks
and
pretty
shriveled
comfy.
child. He was their last hope, and meant to be a champion, but some things will remain distant dreams forever. Linking the fire proved impossible, so the family resorted to unspeakable means. Descriptions don't say or imply what these unspeakable means are, so that's up to us to guess at. But after mentioning these unspeakable means, the Cinder description goes on to say that the path to linking the fire is a cursed one indeed. So Prince Lothric was cursed.
Indeed.
With what? We don't know. But Lorien embraced his brother's curse, leaving him mute and crippled. It is said that Lorien, the one who embraced the curse, did so willingly and embraced his fate. When we kill Lorien in the boss fight, Lothric resurrects him,
It's a bit
saying,
mysterious.
"For that is our curse." So maybe being unable to die itself is the fire-linking curse, and why he says,
You remain.
Yeah, it's because when there's fire, there will always be undead, right? The undead only
after
existed like
becoming
after
one,
the fire.
soul of the twin princes says that they
So the
rejected
fire
their
is kinda
duty
like
to
the
become
cause
lords
of
Cinder
people
and
becoming
settled down
undead?
far, far away
Is
to
that
watch
what
the
it's
fire
saying?
fade from a distance. The curse has made their souls nearly inseparable. So why did Lothric grow to despise and reject his duty as a Lord of Cinder? Well, it's very likely due to a man named as the First of the Scholars. Soulstream says that he was alleged to be a private mentor of the royal prince, and that he doubted the linking of the fire. So it's very likely
I
that
doubt
this
it
scholar
too.
was the one who made Lothric reject his fate as a Lord of Cinder. And there is so much more to the tale of Lothric, but we don't have time.
Because linking
I
of
want to talk
fire
about the
is just
kingdom,
like
about the royal
keeping the world
family,
the
but
same
this
as it
video
is
only
with
about
all
the
the
main
undead.
bosses, so I still
right?
have to mention Osiris, King of Lothric, and his wife, the Queen, so please subscribe and look out for the optional bosses lore video. And the final main boss, the being we
Ooh,
fight after the
yes!
Firekeeper chastises the lords for going without thrones, is the soul of Cinder itself, located within the kiln of the first flame.
I mean, this is the
The soul
willpower of
Cinder
everybody who
is
wanted
actually
to
a
link
fairly
the
easy
fire,
being to
right?
explain. Ever since Lord Gwyn, the first Lord of Cinder, many exalted lords have linked the first flame, and it is their very souls that have manifested themselves as defender of the flame. The soul of Cinder is
I love
their
the
deific
music. So
manifestation.
good.
more specifically, it's clear that the soul of Cinder is this conglomerate of players themselves, us from previous games and cycles who have linked the fire. Using the ninja flip ring from Dark Souls 1, curved swords, pyromancies, sorceries, miracles, and in Phase 2, the music shifts to this twisted tribute of Gwyn's theme as he takes on the First Lord's fighting style. The kiln also, it represents the state of the world.
It's got
if
the
you
piano
look
music
behind
from
you.
Gwyn.
It's a city twisted and distorted and folded in on itself, just like the entire game and bosses we just journeyed through. Dark Souls 3 contains the histories, the people, and the lands of the Abyss Watcher's age, of the Pontiff and Aldrich's age, of Yorm's age, and the story of Lothric that literally seems
how they
to have
even came
called
up with
forth
these
old lords
designs,
of
it's just
Cinder
like beyond
to
me.
link the
It's like,
fire once again.
holy.
And as you stand in front of the flame,
Holy,
4 choices
that's
lay
amazing.
before you, more than any previous game. But that's a video and a story for another time, for this video is far, far too long already, and
Hajola.
judging by my analytics for videos like this, only half of the people who started watching this video will still be watching now. So to you guys,
I'm still
thank
watching.
you for sticking it through. This video took a really long time to make. And the major shout out in this video has to go to a guy who runs a YouTube channel named AGR Cactus. He taught me how to use a lot of these camera tricks, and this video would not look half as good if it wasn't for his guidance.
Yeah,
He
it
has
looks
this
really
video
good.
called
He's
The
got a
Beauty of
cinematic
Lothric,
camera going on.
which really shows off how beautiful this game is when you look at it from angles that the game developers didn't exactly expect us to look at it from. So do me a favor and check it out and subscribe to him. It's crazy. I've probably been talking for about half an hour now, and I haven't covered nearly as much as I would have liked.
This
to
is
have
the ending I
covered.
didn't get.
So for that, we have the Lore Through series.
Wait, that's cool. That's the ending I did not get, I think. That one's interesting too. I should probably check into that one. Maybe if I play it again, I should try and get that ending. Let's see. Oh, there's so many videos I could still watch, but I don't have that much time, so I'm just checking.
There are 2.
Whoops. I'm checking the DLC ones. Really quick. Are you leaving, floppy disk? Are you saying goodbye with that? Let me see. So there's a... I kind of want to know about the DLC as well. So I can learn about Sister Frida as well, but I can also learn about Gale, I guess. Because Gale... That's kind of what I want to know most. The Slave Knight and the Painter. Yay! Chinese advertisements!
This video. For example, is Gale kneeling to the
My
statue
YouTube interface is Dutch. Yeah, okay.
who is his merciful
The
goddess
strange mix of
the
Dutch
forlorn?
and Chinese.
And what is the white-haired woman's dark soul of man?
But you recognize it,
Let's see.
RK.
The painted world has always been a safe haven. In the Age of the Gods, it was the work of the painter Ariamus, hung in Anor Londo, and home to beings like Priscilla, whose abilities the gods feared. At some point, though, we know that this painting fell, for Father Ariandel restored the painted world, and the cycle of paintings
You're going to sleep
began
again,
anew.
Fluffy?
Of course,
Okay.
there could have been many
I'll see you next
paintings
time.
and painters in
Sleep
between
well.
these 2 worlds of Ariamis and Ariandel, because the residents of this painting clearly understand that eventually their world must burn. lest their
What,
paintings
Ricardo?
stagnate and rot. That's a line of thought that only really comes
Oh
about
my
if
God.
they've had generations go through this. And yet, Ariandel decided to eschew tradition. He embraced rot, buried the flame, and
Oh
decided
yeah.
instead
They need to burn down the
satiate
painting,
flame with
right?
his
To
blood.
make it
And
clean
so the
again.
next painter had to be tucked away.
Just real
in the
quick.
depths of the painting,
No.
never to paint the next world.
I don't know if I dare
never to
search
see
for that.
flame.
Can you link it in Discord?
Tasked with concealing this secret child of the painting is Wilhelm, loyal knight of Frida, who is the tyrant
Oh,
of Ariandel.
this guy's simping for Frida.
I've
Yeah.
seen your kind. Time and
Ooh,
time
that's a
again.
cool armor. What armor is that?
Every fleeing man must be caught. Every secret
Bye,
must be
Floppy.
unearthed.
See you next time.
Such is the conceit of the self-proclaimed seeker of truth. But in the end, you lack the stomach for the agony that you'll bring upon yourself.
Frida was the first Ash to enter the painting, yet instead of seeking flame, she embraced the rot along with the good father, and she entrusted Wilhelm with the key to this library. And within this place are what seem to be secrets of the painting. As a tyrant, as Frida, you want to hide history, you want to hide origins.
Legit.
And I think this place, this
Me
library, is where a lot of that is
I
hidden.
love Frida.
Perhaps these
I'm simping
books
so hard
hold
for
the
her, I
histories
cosplay
of
as
the world.
her.
Maybe the destroyed statues hide an important identity, and certainly, Wilhelm guards the white-haired child, who is the key to the future of the next world.
Forgive me, my lady. I swore an oath, but I have failed you.
Passion Souls levels off the charts for that armor, yeah. Isn't this the
Whitehead
Biswatchers
shares a
one
name,
right
so
now?
we call her Arya, in keeping with the tradition of painters named this way.
Arya?
I feel the scent of ash upon thee. Thou art the one of whom Uncle Gale spoke.
We didn't see any painter in Dark Souls 1, did we?
'Tis good. I'll head off to paint. I promised Uncle Gale.
I suppose the painters are the most powerful ones because
Uncle
they can
Gale.
just create a
The
world.
Japanese text actually confirms that she doesn't mean uncle in the literal sense, rather she means uncle in the familiar old man sense. This is important because the parentage of Arya is something worth going into a bit later, but for now let's tackle Gale's curiosities, and he has a ton of them. Gale was once a slave knight, which was a warrior
You have work
used
tomorrow?
as fodder in the bleakest of battles. And perhaps he still is one, because that same description mentions that
Well,
slave
maybe you can
knights
link it on
were
Discord
never
and I will
relieved
check it
from
out
duty,
if you don't mind.
despite their twisted bones and blackened skin. And bizarrely, we never actually get a clue as to what a slave knight's duty could be, nor what entity they were beholden to for this duty, as it's called. Additionally, slave knights were clearly downtrodden, yet they were given lavish red armaments, its fine craftsmanship a symbol of honor. So, I think all of this serves to
His
make
armor
us
is
feel
kinda
like
sick.
Gale is from a
Right?
long-lost time, and one of the oldest undead in the series.
Good night,
And this is a
Ricardo.
thought
Sleep
that's
tight.
reinforced by the miracle that he alone wields. The Way of White Corona is a lost Way of White miracle, a white discus
Oh,
which
yeah.
slices through foes and is so shit that it's no wonder people forgot about it.
It's so
Long
shit.
ago, when the
Oh, did you
imprints
just
left
say
by the
that
gods
that
were still
spell is
deep,
shit?
miracles of the Way
He
of
actually
White
did.
existed alongside aureoles. These were the white discs that existed in Dark Souls 1 at the Age of the Gods that appeared in other people's worlds whenever you cast a miracle. The description goes on to say, those who yearned for the long-lost aureoles fully believed that they would return one day. You find this Way of White miracle in the Corvian settlement in front of their church altar. And this is an altar that
Oh, this
looks
place.
stunningly similar
I remember
to
this
one
place.
on the outside in the Cathedral of the Deep, which was a church of the Way of White. And it's this same place where Gale,
Oh.
the ancient,
Yeah, that's where you
duty-bound
meet him.
knight, says his next
With his
curious
bunny hair.
line of dialogue.
Merciful goddess, mother of the forlorn, who have no place to call their own, please bear witness to our resolve. Fire for Ariandel.
Ooh, fire. Burn it all down. Make chaos take the world.
The ash to kindle
Oops,
flame.
wrong game.
So who is this merciful goddess? This mother of the forlorn, who Gale still believes is watching over them? Perhaps she's the clue to understanding Gale's motivations? I'll list 3 strong candidates, so let me know which one you think is correct. First, Kytha, the goddess of tears. I came across this suggestion in the comments of a missing dialogue video, and I love the theory. It drew my attention to the fact that Gale may well be kneeling to the figure behind the altar in the cleansing chapel, which is a statue
Who is she?
that's repeated all throughout the Cathedral of the Deep. The woman
Yeah, Snag,
is
you should
clutching her
definitely
face,
play them.
almost as if
I haven't
weeping.
played them yet.
And this ties in nicely with Kaitha, who is the goddess of tears, and who is mentioned in the blue and red tearstone rings as a mourner of loved ones and of the undeserving dead. We don't know too much about
You
her
should absolutely play
motivations
them.
as a
They're
goddess,
amazing.
but we know that she was famously worshipped by Morn and his archbishop, both of whom hail from Karim. And that's pretty much everything we know. But additionally, as Stella Elite points out in the comments, the cathedral is a former Way of White church, and the Way of White now has a home in Karim.
The Way of White is related to
Gale is
the
related
to
Way
the
of White,
angels.
so you can see the connections here. But the real question is, can she classify as a merciful goddess, as a mother?
They put the cloth
forlorn?
over the statue.
Well, followers of Kaitha, they provide comfort to the
That's
suffering.
such a cool detail.
And a goddess of tears certainly qualifies her to be a merciful mother.
They put the
of
cloths over
forlorn,
the statues of
don't you
her.
think? But the links do stop there, and we've never really had a clue as to
Play
Kaitha's
DS3 unreleased?
motivations,
You don't like to
and she
play? Oh,
certainly
you should
doesn't
totally do
have
it
a
though. It's
relationship
worth
with
it.
anything in
It's
the
worth
painted
it.
world. So our second candidate, Velka, goddess of sin, does have a connection. Instead of a claim through the Way of White, Velka instead is more directly related to the painted world. For example, in Dark Souls 1, there was a Black Pardoner set that was found within, and the crows were originally envisioned as servants of Velka in the design works, though it is possible that that part of their design has changed. But at any rate, Velka certainly has a relationship with the Sable Church, and it makes a degree of sense for Velka
I'm
to be
finding this one.
invested in the
This is
opposite
a
of
covenant.
what Frida wants, since Frida was a member of the Sable Church who abandoned the church. There are also destroyed
7 or 8
female
years?
Statues
Sounds like
that
a good
have
time to
loose-fitting robes
replay it,
and
because you
one
probably
hand
forgot a bunch of stuff
upheld,
about it,
which
right?
is quite similar to the statue of Velka.
It'll be just like a fresh experience.
So does Velka fit as a merciful goddess? As a mother of the forlorn? I think you could see her that way. Absolving sin is a mercy, and she has a statue for just that tucked away in the undead settlement, for absolving sin. Can you go so far as to call her a mother of the forlorn? That's more of a stretch, but we really know so little about Velka that you can't rule it out.
Yeah, we
As
don't
for
know
the
anything
last
about
candidate,
her.
Priscilla, she's certainly not
You
quite
lost your
classified as a
copy?
goddess,
Oh no.
but she's very much
That's
a mother
sad.
figure and is based in the first painted world. As such, she likely wouldn't tie in with Gale's hollow slave duties.
You can maybe get
but
a
at the
on
very
PC
least,
if you
we
have a
should
PC.
discuss Priscilla's relationship with the child
And wait for a
Arya.
sale or something.
Most notably, Arya's scaled skin.
Back when games were still
and
sold in
her
retail
red,
boxes,
slitted
yeah.
eyes, like Priscilla's green ones.
You had it
on
on
Discord.
Xbox? Oh.
Those who aren't kin to
I like
fire
physical copies of games as well.
cannot paint a world. Those
Just
who
for
sought by
collecting,
fire
you know?
must not paint a world. Don't worry. I haven't forgotten, Mother.
Admittedly, there have certainly been a lot of paintings between this one and Ariamis, so like so many other things in this
A
video,
lot of
it's up to you to
paintings?
decide if we can even guess at Arya's parentage.
Oh yeah,
or the
Ariamis,
identity of the
Ariandel. So
so-called
Arya is the name.
merciful goddess, mother of the forlorn. So what do you think?
My thanks, Ashen
The
One.
box art meta, yeah.
I can almost see the flame. Soon, Uncle Gale will bring me the pigment. I wonder if he has found it. The dark soul of man.
Uh-oh.
The most curious and tantalizing quote at the end of the DLC. I feel like it's only fitting that we end the video in the same way. Similar to how man can usurp the first flame, Arya is also looking to paint the dark soul of man upon her canvas as the pigment, though she doesn't have it just yet. Gale is out there searching for it. Maybe it's
I gave
the
it to
final
her.
piece of his duty. But where does he intend on finding this? What shape does the dark soul of man take? Is it as little as a simple humanity fragment, or as large as a soul of man akin to the soul of Cinder? As usual, we're left with more questions than answers.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
At the end of the DLC, no less.
I
And
always,
From
I always have
aren't
more
exactly
questions than
known
answers.
for making sequential DLCs, since you can purchase these separately, so I have a feeling we're going to be left to figure this out for quite a while to come. So what will the final DLC
I know, I know, like, oh, well, obviously it's gonna talk about Gale. Sorry, Vati, I've already played it. But I think the Elden Ring DLC is probably gonna be a bit similar, right? It's gonna give us like more, like even just the trailer gave us like more questions than answers, right? That's why, yeah, that's what makes it interesting. I agree, Snack. It's just kind of fun. It doesn't, it's like we're not gonna spoon feed you anything. Just try and figure it out, and even some stuff is just not gonna be answered, you know? It's just gonna be a mystery. And I kind of like it. It's super cool. Just like with Gale, like, yeah, I still don't 100% understand Gale's, what he was doing exactly. So he was trying to find the blood of the Dark Soul for the painting. But how, like, and then he decides to just eat those guys. Right? Just wait for Vati to spoon feed it? Yeah, basically. I love Vati's videos, though. They're, like, very well done. And they're really fun. But yeah, maybe the next time I play Dark Souls 1, I'm gonna read, like, every item description I can. Maybe that will be a good thing. I'm not sure. And is the ER DLC at least as big as Limgrave? I'm hoping they're underselling. Yeah. I think Miyazaki's very humble, so I think probably it's pretty big, right? And it's probably gonna have a bunch of like smaller caves, and then like it's gonna have some big dungeons as well, right? And if it's the only DLC for Elden Ring, then you know it's probably gonna be pretty sizable, right? Oh, I can't wait for the ER DLC as well, yeah. Elden Ring, oh my gosh. Because the Dark Souls 3 one was actually amazing. I think anybody should try it out. Like, if you're playing Dark Souls 3, you should definitely try out the DLC, yeah. Miyazaki said we would beat Elden Ring in 30 to 50 hours. Yeah, exactly. He's like, oh, he's just like being humble and like underestimating it, right? He didn't expect people to like spend 100 hours like searching for everything, but just in case people wanted to do that, he put all that content in there, right? Just in case they want to spend like 100 hours or 120 hours so searching for everything, like every corner of the world, just in case. But that's why I love From Software, I think. He's humble, he's taunting us. Yeah, he's like, hurry up, slowpokes. You took that long to find this? It's so obvious. Come on. No, that's why I love From Software as a developer. They add so much stuff for us just to discover. And they're like, here you go. Here's something amazing. Go explore, right? I love it so much. This is just my kind of game, I think. Yeah, I'm so happy I played this game. RK, you should definitely play Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. I can't speak for Dark Souls 2 because I haven't tried it yet. But I probably will at some point. And then I can say a bit more about it as well. But for now, yeah, that was our Dark Souls 3 journey. And I would like to thank everybody who watched me struggle through the game. And came and enjoyed some lore videos as well. I'm so happy to have played this game, and it's like the music from the Gale file still lives in my head like rent free for like the past week or so. You know, it's like in my head. So I think next week I will start streaming a little bit more Tomb Raider, because I want to finish Tomb Raider 2, so I might stream that next time. And after that, I haven't 100% decided yet what I'm going to stream. But I will be having a 12-hour stream marathon on in about 10 days or so. And on that day, I'm definitely going to play Dark Souls 1 New Game Plus and probably Elden Ring as well. I'm going to just do some various fun stuff because it's going to be like a 12-hour stream. Also, it's going to be Drunk Souls. If I gain a sub, I take a sip. So if you guys want to check it out and enjoy me being extremely weird, then check that stream out for sure. I'm planning for that one right now. So I hope everybody has a lovely day or night. And thank you so much for coming to the stream and hanging out with me and chatting. And I'll see you in the next stream. Goodbye!